She stepped off the stagecoach with a broken arm and a broken future. The man she'd traveled 2,000 miles to marry was already in the ground. No husband, no home, no money. Just pain radiating through shattered bone and the Montana sun burning down on her final mistake. But when a tall cowboy with calloused hands and careful eyes knelt beside her in the dust, something impossible flickered to life. Stay with me until the end of this story, and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far love can travel. The stagecoach hit another rut, and Evelyn Hart bit down on her lip hard enough to taste copper. The jolt sent fresh agony lancing up her left arm, the arm that had been broken for 2 days, bound in nothing but torn petticoats, and the driver's whiskey-soaked kindness. She pressed her right hand against the makeshift splint fingers. Trembling eyes squeezed shut against tears that had long since run dry. Just a little farther. Just hold on a little longer. Through the dusty window, Montana stretched endlessly in all directions, vast golden, utterly indifferent to her suffering. The land looked nothing like Boston. No brick townhouses, no gas lamps, no familiar faces hurrying past on cobblestone streets. Just prairie grass rippling in the wind like an ocean made of gold and mountains rising purple in the distance like the edges of the world itself. She'd imagined this arrival so differently. In her mind, she'd rehearsed it 1,000 times during the endless weeks of travel, stepping down from the coach with dignity, spotting Martin Hale in the crowd, seeing approval in his eyes, as he took in her traveling suit, worn but respectable, the best she could afford. She'd practiced her smile, the one that didn't show too much eagerness or too little warmth, the smile of a woman grateful for a second chance but not desperate for it. That woman felt like someone else now, someone who'd existed in a different lifetime before the axle broke on a rain-slicked road outside of Billings, before the coach went sideways into a ditch, before her arm snapped with a sound like a green branch breaking. "Miles City," the driver called out, his voice rough with trail dust and tobacco. 15 minutes to final stop." Evelyn opened her eyes. The pain hadn't lessened. It never did, but she'd learned to breathe around it, to function despite it. She had no choice. The laudanum the doctor in Billings had given her was long gone, and she'd spent her last coins on bread and water at the previous station. She smoothed her skirt with her good hand, trying to restore some semblance of order to her appearance. It was hopeless. 2 days of traveling with a broken arm had left her disheveled beyond repair, hair falling from its pin's face drawn in pale dark circles under her eyes from sleepless nights. The sleeve of her traveling suit was torn and stained with blood that had long since dried to rust. What will he think of me? The thought came unbidden, and with it a fresh wave of anxiety that had nothing to do with physical pain. Martin Hale had written such careful, measured letters. He'd seemed like a practical man, someone who understood that a mail-order bride was a business arrangement as much as a marriage. But surely even a practical man expected his bride to arrive whole and presentable, not broken and half wild with pain. The stagecoach began to slow. Through the window, Evelyn caught her first glimpses of Miles City wooden buildings lining a wide dirt street. Horses tied to hitching posts, men in dusty work clothes moving with the unhurried purpose of people who lived their lives under open sky. It was smaller than she'd expected, rougher, but there was something honest about it that Boston had lost years ago beneath layers of soot and pretension. The coach lurched to a final stop, and Evelyn had to press her lips together to keep from crying out. Every movement was torture. Every breath felt like it might shatter something else inside her. "All right, folks, Miles City Station." The driver climbed down from his perch, footsteps heavy on the dusty street. A moment later, the door swung open, letting in a blast of prairie wind that smelled of horses and sage and distance. An older couple climbed out first, the man helping his wife navigate the high step with patient hands. Then a traveling salesman with 2 heavy cases. Finally, it was just Evelyn, and the impossibly tall stepped down to the street. She gathered what remained of her courage and moved to the door. The driver, a grizzled man named Tom, who'd been kind to her since Billings, appeared in the doorway with concern etched deep in his weathered face. "Easy now, Miss Hart. Let me help you." He reached up and Evelyn took his hand with her good one, using it to steady herself as she navigated the step. The descent jarred her broken arm despite her best efforts, and this time she couldn't stop the small sound that escaped her throat. "There, now you're down." Tom kept his voice gentle, the way someone might speak to a wounded animal. Your intended meeting, you hear? Yes, the word came out whisper thin. Mr. Martin Hale. He should be... She broke off, scanning the small crowd gathered around the stagecoach. Men were unloading luggage from the boot. The older couple was already walking away arm in arm, but there was no one stepping forward with recognition in their eyes, no one claiming her. You see him? Tom asked, his tone carefully neutral. Not yet. But surely he'll... Evelyn's voice trailed off. The crowd was dispersing. In moments there would be no one left but her and Tom and the empty street stretching away in both directions. Something was wrong. Miss Hart, a woman's voice sharp with authority. Evelyn turned to see a stern-faced woman in a dark dress approaching. She had the bearing of someone used to delivering bad news. Miss Evelyn Hart from Boston. Yes. Evelyn's chest tightened. I'm here to meet Martin Hale. Has there been some delay? The woman's expression flickered with something that might have been pity. I'm Mrs. Dorothy Marsh. I run the boarding house here in town. Reverend asked me to meet your coach. She paused, and in that pause, Evelyn felt the bottom drop out of her world. I'm afraid I have difficult news, Miss Hart. Mr. Hale passed away 3 weeks ago. The words didn't make sense at first. They were sounds without meaning, like a foreign language. Evelyn stared at Mrs. Marsh, waiting for the translation, waiting for reality to reassert itself. I don't understand. He wrote to me. Just 6 weeks ago, he wrote, pneumonia took him quick. Mrs. Marsh continued, her voice clinical in its efficiency. He was dead within 4 days of taking sick. We didn't know how to reach you. You were already on your way. Dead. The word crashed through Evelyn's carefully maintained composure like a stone through glass. Martin Hale was dead. The man she'd traveled 2,000 miles to marry, the man who represented her last chance at a respectable future, the reason she'd left everything behind, dead. But Evelyn's voice sounded strange in her own ears, hollow and far away. I sold everything. I used my last money for the ticket. I can't. The street seemed to tilt beneath her feet. Or maybe she was tilting. The pain in her arm suddenly felt distant, eclipsed by a larger pain that had no specific location, that seemed to radiate from her chest outward until her entire body was nothing but hurt. Steady now. Tom's hand found her elbow. Don't you faint on us. I won't, she whispered, though she wasn't sure it was true. I need a moment. Mrs. Marsh's expression remained unmoved. I can offer you 2 nights at the boarding house, Christian charity, but after that you'll need to make other arrangements. I can't run a charity operation. 2 nights. Evelyn did the arithmetic automatically, uselessly. 2 nights before she'd be on the street with no money, no prospects, and a broken arm that made any kind of work impossible. 2 nights before... She couldn't finish the thought. The edges of her vision were starting to darken. I have a little money, she heard herself say, though it was a lie. I can pay Miss Hart, with respect, you look like you can barely stand. Mrs. Marsh's tone suggested this was a moral failing. And that arm needs proper medical attention. The doctor's office is 2 streets over, but his fees, I'll manage, Evelyn interrupted, though she had no idea how. Thank you for meeting the coach, Mrs. Marsh. Excuse me. She needed to move, needed to put distance between herself and this conversation before she completely fell apart in front of strangers. Using the last of her strength, Evelyn turned and took 3 unsteady steps toward the edge of the street before her knees finally gave out. She didn't remember falling. One moment she was upright, the next she was on her hands and knees in the dirt, the impact sending such a violent shock through her broken arm that her vision went white. This time she did cry out, a ragged, helpless sound that seemed to come from someone else. Miss Hart! Tom's voice alarmed. Footsteps approaching. But before anyone could reach her, different footsteps, faster, heavier, cut through the buzz in her ears. She felt more than saw someone drop to a crouch beside her. Easy. The voice was male, deep, surprisingly gentle. Don't try to move yet. A hand, large, work-roughened, warm, settled lightly on her shoulder. Not grabbing, not demanding, just present, steadying. Evelyn forced her eyes to focus. Through tears and pain, she saw a man kneeling in the dust beside her. He was tall, she could tell even with him crouched down with dark hair that needed cutting, and eyes the color of Montana sky in winter, pale blue-gray and impossibly clear. His face was weathered by sun and wind, angular and strong with a day's worth of stubble darkening his jaw. He wore work clothes like every other man in Miles City, denim and worn cotton and dusty boots, but something about the way he carried himself suggested competence, sureness. "Your arm's broken," he said quietly, his gaze moving to her makeshift splint. His expression tightened almost imperceptibly. "How long?" "2 days." Her voice shook. "Since Billings." Something flashed in those winter sky eyes. Anger, maybe, or pain. "Jesus, and you've been traveling like this?" The coach couldn't... There was no choice. There's always a choice. But his tone wasn't harsh. If anything, it softened further. He shifted slightly, and she caught a scent that was pure Montana leather and sage and horse and open air. "My name's Cole Reddington. I have a ranch about an hour outside town. I know a thing or two about setting broken bones, and I know for damn sure that Splint isn't doing you any good." Evelyn wanted to respond, wanted to maintain some shred of dignity, but another wave of pain chose that moment to crash through her, and all she could do was close her eyes against it. "She's the mail-order bride." Mrs. Marsh's voice cut through from somewhere above them. "Come to marry Martin Hale, but of course he's dead, so now she's got nowhere to go and no money, and—" "That's enough, Dorothy." Cole's voice didn't rise, but something in it made Mrs. Marsh stop talking immediately. He turned his attention back to Evelyn. "Can you stand if I help you?" "I think so." "All right then." He moved with careful deliberation, positioning himself beside her. "I'm going to put my arm around your waist. Lean into me. Don't worry about your weight. I've got you. Ready." She managed a nod. Cole's arm came around her solid and sure, and then he was lifting her up with so much care that it barely hurt at all. For a moment, she was simply standing pressed against his side, his body taking most of her weight while she found her balance. "Good," he murmured. "You're doing good." Up close, she realized he was even taller than she'd thought, easily 6 feet, maybe more. She barely came up to his shoulder. It should have been frightening being this close to a strange man in a strange town, but somehow it wasn't. Maybe she was too exhausted for fear. Or maybe it was something else. "Let me help you, ma'am." Cole's voice stayed quiet, meant for her ears only. "Let me get you to the doctor and make sure that arm's set proper. After that, we'll figure out what comes next. But right now you need medical attention, and arguing about it is just wasting time you don't have." Evelyn looked up at him, this stranger who'd appeared out of nowhere, and saw nothing but honest concern in his weathered face. No judgment, no calculation about what he might get out of helping her. Just simple human decency offered without conditions. It broke something inside her, some last defense she'd been holding on to since the moment she'd climbed onto that first train in Boston. "I don't have money for a doctor," she whispered, the admission burning like acid. "I don't have money for anything." Cole's expression didn't change, but his arm tightened slightly around her waist. "Didn't ask if you did. Come on now, one step at a time." He guided her forward with infinite patience, adjusting his stride to match her unsteady steps. Tom called something about her trunk, and Cole called back that he'd handle it. Mrs. Marsh said something else that Evelyn didn't catch, but Cole ignored her entirely, his full attention focused on getting Evelyn across the street. The doctor's office was a small wooden building with a faded sign that read, "Dr. James Wheeler, Physician." Cole helped her up the 2 steps to the door and pushed it open without knocking. "Doc, you here?" "In the back," a voice responded. "Be right out." The interior was dim after the bright street, and it took Evelyn's eyes a moment to adjust. The room was sparse but clean, examining table glass-fronted cabinet full of bottles and instruments, a few chairs. Medical texts lined a shelf on one wall. It smelled of carbolic acid and something herbal she couldn't identify. Cole guided her to the examining table. "Can you sit?" She could barely. The moment her weight was off her feet, exhaustion crashed over her like a physical force. She swayed, and Cole's hand came up to steady her shoulder again. "Hold on," he said quietly. "Just a little longer." A door at the back opened and a man emerged, 50s gray-haired, with the perpetually tired eyes of a frontier doctor who'd seen too much suffering and not enough help. He took one look at Evelyn and his expression sharpened. What happened? Stage accident 2 days ago, Cole answered when Evelyn couldn't find her voice. Arm's been broken since Billings. That splint looks like someone did their best with what they had, but she needs it set proper. Dr. Wheeler approached, already reaching for Evelyn's injured arm. His touch was efficient, professional, but not particularly gentle. She hissed in pain as he examined the makeshift splint. This needs to come off. He looked at Evelyn directly for the first time. I'm going to need to feel the bones, see how it's set. It's going to hurt. I know, she managed. Cole, hold her steady. Cole moved without hesitation, positioning himself behind the examining table so he could support Evelyn's shoulders. His hands settled on her upper arms, firm but careful, avoiding her injury. Look at me, he said softly, close to her ear. Not at what he's doing. Just look at me. She turned her head, and there were those winter sky eyes, steady and calm. Something about them made it easier to breathe. Dr. Wheeler began unwrapping the blood-stained petticoats. Even his careful movements sent pain crackling up her arm. Evelyn bit her lip hard, tasting copper again. Easy, Cole murmured. You're doing fine. The last of the fabric came away. Dr. Wheeler's fingers probed her forearm with practiced efficiency, and despite her best efforts, Evelyn couldn't stop the whimper that escaped. Breathe, Cole said quietly. In through your nose, out through your mouth. That's it. She tried to follow his instructions, tried to focus on his voice instead of the agony radiating from her arm. Dr. Wheeler made a low sound in his throat. Dissatisfaction, or maybe resignation. It's set wrong, he announced. Bones already starting to knit, but at a bad angle. If it heals like this, you'll have limited mobility and chronic pain. It needs to be rebroken and set properly. The words took a moment to penetrate. When they did, Evelyn felt the blood drain from her face. Rebroken? Her voice came out barely above a whisper. I'm sorry, Miss Hart. Evelyn Hart. Miss Hart, I know it's not what you want to hear, but if we leave it as is, you'll be dealing with the consequences for the rest of your life. The arm needs to be rebroken and reset now, while the initial fracture is still recent enough that the bone hasn't fully fused. Evelyn's throat closed. She couldn't form words around the terror rising in her chest. The pain of the initial break had been the worst thing she'd ever experienced. To deliberately cause that again. How much? Cole's voice cut through her panic. How much for the procedure? Dr. Wheeler named a figure that might as well have been $1 million. Evelyn shook her head helplessly. I can't. I don't have. I'll cover it, Cole said immediately. Both Evelyn and Dr. Wheeler turned to stare at him. You'll what? Dr. Wheeler asked. I'll cover her medical expenses. Do what needs to be done. Cole, you don't even know this woman. Don't need to know her to see she needs help. Cole's tone brooked no argument. Do the procedure, Doc. I'll settle up with you after. Evelyn twisted to look at him, fully ignoring the protest from her broken arm. I can't let you do that. I can't. I'll never be able to pay you back. Didn't ask you to pay me back. Those winter sky eyes met hers steadily. Sometimes people just need help, Miss Hart. And sometimes other people are in a position to provide it. That's all this is. But I'm a complete stranger. Won't be a stranger after today, will you? A hint of something that might have been a smile touched the corner of his mouth. Now you can argue with me about this while your arm sets wrong and causes you pain for the rest of your life. Or you can let Dr. Wheeler fix it proper, your choice. When he put it like that, there was really only one answer. Evelyn drew a shaky breath. All right, she whispered. All right. Dr. Wheeler nodded briskly. I'll need to give you something for the pain first. I have laudanum. No. The word came out sharper than Evelyn intended. She'd seen what laudanum did to her mother in the final months, the way it hollowed her out, made her into something less than human. No laudanum. Miss Hart, I have to insist. What I'm about to do. I said no. She lifted her chin, found some last reserve of strength she didn't know she had. I've made it this far. I'll make it through this too. Dr. Wheeler looked like he wanted to argue, but Cole spoke first. She's made her choice, Doc. Respect it." For a long moment, the doctor studied them both. Then he sighed. "All right, but Cole, you're going to need to hold her down. When I re-break this, she's going to fight. It's involuntary. Can you do that?" "Yes." "It's not going to be pretty." "I know, doctor." Wheeler began gathering supplies, clean bandages, splints, a basin of water that smelled strongly of carbolic. Cole moved around to face Evelyn directly. "I need you to lie back," he said gently. "I'm going to hold your shoulders. You can fight me, I won't let go. You can scream if you need to. Nobody here will think less of you for it. Understand?" Evelyn nodded, not trusting her voice. Cole helped her ease back onto the examining table, then positioned himself at her head. His hands settled on her shoulders, warm and solid through her thin dress. "Look at me," he said again. "Not at him. At me." She fixed her eyes on his face. In the dim light of the doctor's office, his features had a sculptor's quality, all strong lines and weathered planes, but his eyes remained kind. "Tell me about Boston," he said conversationally, as if they were sitting in a parlor instead of preparing for pain. "What's it like there?" "Crowded," she managed, "and loud, and—" "Doctor." Wheeler's hands closed around her broken arm. "And," Cole prompted, his voice steady. "And what else?" "Cold. It's so cold in winter you can't—" The bone broke with a sound like a gunshot. Evelyn's scream tore from her throat before she could stop it. Her body arched off the table, every muscle locking in agony. But Cole's hands held her shoulders firm, keeping her from thrashing. "Breathe," he commanded, his voice cutting through the red haze of pain. "Breathe, Evelyn. I've got you." Dr. Wheeler was doing something to her arm, manipulating the bone, setting it properly, and each movement sent fresh waves of torture through her. She heard herself making sounds, animal noises of hurt, but couldn't stop them. "Stay with me," Cole said. His face filled her vision. "Don't go away. Stay right here." She tried. God, she tried. But the pain was too much, too all-consuming. The edges of her vision started to darken. "Eyes on me," Cole ordered. "Evelyn, look at me." She focused on his eyes. Winter sky. Montana sky. Clear and endless. "That's it. You're doing so good. So brave." Dr. Wheeler wrapped something tight around her arm, bandages, splints. The pressure was excruciating. Evelyn's fingers dug into the examining table nails, scraping against wood. "Almost done," Cole murmured. "Almost through it. Just a little more." Time lost meaning. There was only pain in Cole's voice and his hands on her shoulders anchoring her to reality. Then finally, Dr. Wheeler stepped back. "Finished." The bones set properly now. The relief was so profound that Evelyn started to cry great heaving sobs that she couldn't control. Cole's hands loosened on her shoulders, but didn't leave entirely. "Let it out," he said quietly. "You've earned it." She cried until she had nothing left, until she was empty and hollowed out and too exhausted to feel shame. Through it all, Cole stayed exactly where he was, a steady presence at her shoulder. Finally, the tears subsided into hiccuping breaths. Dr. Wheeler appeared with a cup of water, which she drank gratefully. "The bone will take 6 to 8 weeks to heal fully," he said in his clinical voice. "You'll need to keep the arm immobilized. No heavy lifting, no strain. Come back in a week so I can check on it." Evelyn nodded, too wrung out to speak. "She'll need somewhere to stay while she heals," Coley said. He'd straightened up, but remained close. "Somewhere she can rest proper." "The boarding house," Dr. Wheeler began. "Won't do." Cole's tone was flat. "Dorothy Marsh will give her 2 days if she's lucky, then turn her out with nowhere to go and no way to earn money with that arm." "What exactly are you suggesting?" Cole was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was careful, measured. "My ranch has a spare room. Used to be my mother's before she passed. It's clean and comfortable. Miss Hart could stay there while she heals. No impropriety. I have a ranch hand who lives in the bunkhouse, and his wife comes by daily to help with cooking and such. She could chaperone if that's a concern." "Cole, you can't just—" Dr. Wheeler shook his head. "What will people say?" "Don't much care what people say. Never have." Cole finally looked away from Evelyn to meet the doctor's gaze. "She needs help. I can provide it. Seems simple enough to me. Nothing's simple when it comes to an unmarried man and an unmarried woman living under the same roof. Then we'll make it simple by not giving a damn about gossip. Cole turned back to Evelyn. Miss Hart, I'm offering you honest work and shelter while you heal. Nothing more, nothing less. You'd have your own room, your privacy, and time to figure out what comes next. If that sounds acceptable to you, you're welcome at my ranch. Evelyn stared at him. This man, this complete stranger, was offering her salvation. It should have felt suspicious, dangerous even. She should have been afraid of his motives. But when she looked at Cole Reddington's weathered, honest face, all she felt was a desperate, overwhelming relief. Why? The question escaped before she could stop it. Why are you helping me? Cole considered for a moment. My mother used to say that kindness is the rent we pay for living on this earth. Figure I'm a few months behind on my rent. He paused. And because nobody should have to face what you're facing alone. Nobody. The sincerity in his voice made her throat tight. Evelyn looked down at her newly splinted arm, at the clean white bandages that Dr. Wheeler had wrapped with professional care. She thought about the 2 nights at the boarding house and then the street. She thought about trying to find work with a broken arm, about winter coming and having nowhere to go. She thought about Cole's hands on her shoulders holding her steady through the worst pain of her life. His voice telling her to stay, to breathe, to look at him. All right, she said softly. Yes. Thank you. No need for thanks. Cole straightened, then offered her his hand to help her sit up. Let's get you settled then. Got a wagon outside, we'll collect your trunk from the station and head out to the ranch. It's about an hour's ride, but the road's smooth and I'll take it slow. I should protest, Dr. Wheeler muttered, but there was resignation in his voice. I should tell you both that this is a terrible idea. But you won't, Cole said, because you know she's got no other options, and leaving her to fend for herself would be a damn sight worse than anything gossip could do. Dr. Wheeler sighed. Cole, I'll send my bill. Send it. I'll settle up next time I'm in town. Cole helped Evelyn stand, his arm coming around her waist again to support her weight. Ready, Miss Hart? She wasn't sure she'd ever be ready for anything again, but she nodded anyway. The walk back to the station was a blur. Tom had her trunk waiting, a battered thing that held everything she owned in the world. Cole loaded it into his wagon with easy strength, while Evelyn sat on the bench seat, cradling her newly set arm and trying to make sense of the last hour. Her entire life had fractured and reformed like her broken bone. Martin Hale was dead. Her plans were dust, and she was about to ride off into the Montana wilderness with a stranger who'd promised her gentleness. It was insane. It was desperate. It was the only choice she had. Cole climbed up beside her and took the reins. The wagon lurched forward, wheels crunching over dry dirt, and Miles City began to fall away behind them. Evelyn watched the town recede, the false-fronted buildings. The dusty streets, the few curious faces turned their way, and felt something shift inside her chest. Terror and relief twisted together until she couldn't tell them apart. It's a good ranch, Cole said after they'd traveled in silence for several minutes. Nothing fancy, but the house is solid and the land's good. I run cattle, mostly few horses. Get by comfortable enough. How long have you lived there? All my life. My father built the ranch from nothing, and when he passed, it came to me. That was 8 years ago. He kept his eyes on the road ahead, giving her the privacy to look at him without being observed. It can get lonely out there, truth be told, but it's home. Is there... Evelyn stumbled over the question, unsure how to phrase it delicately. No wife, if that's what you're asking. Cole's mouth quirked slightly. Came close once, long time ago. Didn't work out. Haven't found anyone since who seemed to fit with ranch life. Most women don't take to the isolation. I see. What about you? He glanced at her briefly before returning his attention to the horses. What made you answer Martin Hale's advertisement? It was a fair question, but the answer felt too raw to speak aloud. Evelyn looked down at her hands, one wrapped around the other, both resting in her lap. My mother died 6 months ago, she said finally. She'd been sick for a long time, and caring for her, well, it took everything I had. After she passed, I realized I had nothing left. No family, no prospects, barely enough money to keep our rooms for another month. She paused. When I saw Mr. Hale's advertisement, it seemed like a chance to start over. to build something new where nobody knew me as the poor spinster who'd wasted her youth caring for an invalid mother. The bitterness in her own voice surprised her. That wasn't wasted, Cole said quietly. Taking care of someone you love, that's never wasted. You wouldn't say that if you'd lived it, if you'd watched yourself become invisible while everyone else moved on with their lives. Evelyn shook her head.
Bon sa mom.
By the time my mother died, I was 29 years old with no husband, no prospects, no skills except nursing the dying. Mr. Hale's advertisement wasn't romantic, but it was honest. He needed a wife to help run his household. I needed security and purpose. It seemed like a fair exchange. Except he died before you got here. Except that. They rode in silence for a while. The prairie stretched away on all sides, broken occasionally by stands of cottonwood trees or outcroppings of dark rock. In the distance, the mountains rose like a promise or a threat. Evelyn couldn't decide which. I'm sorry, Cole said eventually. About your mother. About Hale. About all of it. Don't be. You're the only good thing that's happened to me since I left Boston. The words came out before she could think about them, too honest and too revealing. Evelyn felt heat rise in her cheeks. I mean, I know what you mean. Cole's voice held something warm, almost amused. And you're welcome. The sun climbed higher as they traveled, turning the prairie golden. The motion of the wagon was surprisingly gentle, and between exhaustion and relief, and the lingering shock of everything that had happened, Evelyn felt herself starting to drift. You can sleep if you need to, Cole said. Still got a ways to go, and you look about ready to fall over. I shouldn't. Why not? I'll keep the wagon steady. Nothing to worry about. She wanted to argue, wanted to maintain the last shreds of propriety and dignity, but her body had other ideas. Before she could stop herself, Evelyn's eyes were sliding closed. The last thing she felt before sleep claimed her was the slight shift of the wagon as Cole adjusted the reins and the solid warmth of his shoulder, somehow impossibly there when she swayed sideways. She dreamed of broken things made whole of gentle hands setting bones of winter sky eyes that promised she wasn't alone anymore. When she woke, the sun was lower in the sky, and Cole Reddington's ranch spread out before them, a weathered house, a barn, corrals with horses, and land that rolled away toward forever. Welcome home, Miss Hart, Cole said softly, for however long you need it. And despite everything, despite the pain and the fear and the impossible strangeness of this day, Evelyn found herself believing him. The house was smaller than she'd expected, but sturdy, built from logs that had weathered to silver gray under decades of Montana sun. A wide porch wrapped around the front, and someone had planted wildflowers along the foundation they were going to seed now, but she could imagine how they must have looked in summer. Cole brought the wagon to a stop and set the brake. Here we are? He climbed down, then came around to her side, offering his hand. Watch your step. Ground's a bit uneven. Evelyn accepted his help, her legs unsteady after the long ride. The afternoon sun painted everything gold, and the air smelled different here than in town. Cleaner somehow, with notes of pine and grass, and something else she couldn't name. Space, maybe. Freedom. A dog appeared from behind the barn, a big shaggy thing with one ear that stood up and one that flopped down. It bounded toward them with tail wagging, and Evelyn instinctively took a step back. That's Bear, Cole said. Worst guard dog you ever saw. He'd help a thief carry out the furniture if they petted him first. Bear, sit. The dog sat immediately, tongue-lolling, brown eyes fixed adoringly on Cole. He won't jump on you, Cole continued, but he will want to be your best friend. You comfortable with dogs? We never had one in Boston, but he seems nice. He's a fool is what he is, but good company. Cole scratched behind the dog's ears, then straightened. Let me show you inside, get you settled, then I'll bring in your trunk. He led her up the porch steps and through the front door. The interior was dim after the bright outdoors, and it took Evelyn's eyes a moment to adjust. When they did, she found herself in a main room that served as both kitchen and sitting area. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, and simple furniture, a table with 4 chairs, a worn sofa, a rocking chair filled the space. Everything was clean but masculine functional rather than decorative. This is the main room, Cole said, somewhat unnecessarily. Kitchen's through here. He gestured to an area with a cast-iron stove and open shelving. And there's 2 bedrooms. Mine's back there. He pointed to a door on the right. Yours is here. He opened a door on the left, and Evelyn followed him into a small room with a single window that looked out toward the mountains. A bed with a simple wooden frame stood against one wall covered with a quilt that had clearly been made by skilled hands. A dresser, a washstand with a basin and pitcher, and a small mirror completed the furnishings. Like the main room, everything was spotlessly clean. "It was my mother's room," Cole said quietly. "After my father died, she couldn't bear to sleep in their room anymore, so she took this one. Had it until she passed 3 years ago." He paused. "I keep it ready. Don't know why exactly. Guess I always figured someone might need it someday." Evelyn touched the quilt with her good hand, feeling the careful stitches. "It's lovely. Thank you. Washstand's got fresh water and there's towels in the dresser. I'll bring in your trunk and then—" He trailed off, looking uncertain for the first time since they'd met. "I imagine you'll want to rest. It's been a hell of a day." "The longest day of my life," she admitted. "And yes, I think I'd like to lie down if that's all right." "Of course it is. This is your room now for as long as you need it. You don't have to ask permission for anything." He backed toward the door. "I'll just get your trunk." He disappeared and Evelyn heard his boots on the porch, then the sound of him moving her trunk. She sank onto the edge of the bed, testing it. The mattress was firm but comfortable, and when she leaned back against the pillows, something inside her loosened. She was safe. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, she was truly safe. Cole appeared in the doorway with her trunk barely breathing hard despite its weight. He set it down at the foot of the bed. "Need anything else before I let you rest?" "No, thank you, for everything." He nodded, then hesitated. "I should mention there's a ranch hand Tom Whitfield. Not the same Tom from the Stagecoach Different Tom. He lives in the bunkhouse about 100 yards that way." Cole gestured vaguely. "His wife Sarah comes by most days to help with cooking and laundry and such. She'll be here tomorrow morning and I'll introduce you proper. She's good people. You'll like her." "I'm sure I will." "Right then. I'll leave you to it." He backed out and pulled the door closed, his footsteps retreating across the main room. Evelyn sat in the quiet for a moment, then carefully removed her dusty traveling boots and lay back on the bed fully clothed. Through the window, she could see the mountains turning purple in the late afternoon light. Her arm throbbed steadily, a constant reminder of everything that had happened. But it was bearable now. Manageable. She closed her eyes and let exhaustion carry her away. When she woke, the room was dark and she had no idea how long she'd slept. Panic fluttered in her chest until she remembered where she was. Cole's Ranch, Montana. Safe. Lamplight showed under her door and she could hear movement in the main room, the clink of dishes, the scrape of a chair. Her stomach growled, reminding her that she hadn't eaten since, yesterday. This morning, time had become a blur. She stood carefully smoothing her wrinkled dress with her good hand and opened the door. Cole was at the stove, stirring something in a pot. He'd lit several lamps around the room, casting everything in warm golden light. He looked up when he heard her door open. "You're awake. Good timing. I was just about to check on you." He gestured to the pot. "Nothing fancy, just stew. But there's plenty if you're hungry." "Starving, actually." "Well, then sit yourself down." He moved to the table, which she now saw was set for 2. "How's the arm?" "It hurts, but not like before." She settled into one of the chairs. "The doctor did a good job. He's skilled, I'll give him that, even if he is a worrier." Cole ladled stew into 2 bowls and brought them to the table, then fetched bread and butter. "It's not much, but it'll fill you up." The stew was simple beef and potatoes and carrots in a rich broth, but it was the best thing Evelyn had tasted in weeks. She ate slowly, mindful of her empty stomach, while Cole ate with the efficient manner of a man accustomed to eating alone. "This is delicious," she said after several bites. "It's edible, which is about all I can claim." Cole broke off a piece of bread. "I can cook enough to keep myself alive, but Sarah's the real cook. Wait till you taste her biscuits, there's something close to heaven." You mentioned she comes by daily." "Most days, yeah. She and Tom live in town, but they help out here regular. Tom with the ranch work, Sarah with the house. It's a good arrangement. They need the money, I need the help." He paused. "She'll be a good friend to you, I think. Someone to talk to anyway." Ranch life can be isolated. Evelyn nodded, taking another spoonful of stew. The silence between them was comfortable, surprisingly so, given that they'd known each other for less than a day. "Can I ask you something?" she said after a moment. "Sure." "Earlier, when you told the doctor you didn't care what people would say about me staying here, did you mean that, or were you just being kind?" Cole set down his spoon and looked at her directly. "I meant it. I've never put much stock in gossip, Miss Hart. People are going to talk regardless of what you do, so you might as well do what's right and let them talk." "It's Evelyn. Please. Miss Hart makes me feel like a school teacher." Something that might have been a smile touched his face. "Evelyn, then. And I'm Cole, not Mr. Reddington." "All right, Cole." His name felt strange on her tongue, too familiar, too intimate, but also somehow right. "I just want you to know that I appreciate what you've done. More than I can say." "You already said it. No need to keep thanking me." He stood and began clearing the dishes. "You want coffee, or I could make tea if you'd rather." "Coffee would be wonderful." He moved around the kitchen with easy competence, and Evelyn found herself watching him. He was tall and lean, all rangy strength built from years of hard work. His movements were economical, no wasted motion, and there was something calming about the way he inhabited space. No nervous energy, no restlessness, just solid presence. "Do you mind if I ask you a question now?" he said as he poured coffee into 2 tin cups. "Fair's fair. What were you planning to do if Martin Hale had still been alive, I mean? What kind of life did you think you'd have here?" Evelyn accepted the coffee cup he offered, wrapping her good hand around its warmth. "I don't know, honestly. I had such romantic notions at first, the idea of starting fresh, of building something new. But the closer I got to Montana, the more I realized I had no idea what I was actually walking into." She stared into her coffee. "I kept telling myself it didn't matter, that anything would be better than staying in Boston with nothing and no one. But now I wonder if I was just running away rather than running towards something." "Maybe both," Cole said quietly. "Sometimes you've got to run away from one thing before you can run toward another." "Is that what you did, stayed here and ran toward something?" "No. I stayed because leaving never occurred to me. This land is in my blood for better or worse." He took a drink of his coffee. "But I've watched other people come and go looking for fresh starts or running from old mistakes. Montana's full of people trying to become someone new. Most don't make it. The land's too hard, the isolation too much. But the ones who do, they become something real, something solid." "Do you think I could become something solid?" Cole studied her for a long moment. "Yeah," he said finally. "I think you could. You made it through today, didn't you? That takes strength." The compliment warmed her more than the coffee. Evelyn found herself smiling despite everything. They talked for another hour, the conversation flowing easier than it had any right to between strangers. Cole told her about the ranch, the herd of cattle he was building, the horses he bred on the side, the constant work that came with managing land. She told him more about Boston, about her mother's long illness, about the loneliness that had become her constant companion. Finally, exhaustion pulled at her again. Cole noticed before she said anything. "You should get some more rest. Tomorrow you can meet Sarah and Tom, get your bearings proper. But tonight, just sleep." "What about dishes?" She gestured at the table. "I'll handle them. You're healing, that's work enough." She wanted to argue, but the truth was her arm had started throbbing again, and her whole body felt heavy. "All right. Good night, Cole. And thank you. Again." "Good night, Evelyn." She retreated to her room and managed to change into her nightgown one-handed, though it took longer than it should have. When she finally crawled under the quilt, she expected to lie awake for hours, her mind churning over everything that had happened. Instead, she fell asleep almost immediately, lulled by the unfamiliar sounds of the ranch, settling around her and the knowledge that someone kind slept just on the other side of the wall. The days began to develop a rhythm. Evelyn would wake to the smell of coffee and find Cole already up, usually coming in from morning chores. They'd eat breakfast together, simple fare of eggs and bacon and bread, and then he'd head out to work the ranch while she spent the day recovering. Sarah Whitfield appeared the morning after Evelyn's arrival, a round-faced woman in her 40s with kind eyes and capable hands. She took one look at Evelyn's injured arm and clucked her tongue. "That's a bad break, honey. You just sit yourself down and let me handle things today." "I should help. You should heal. That's your job right now. Sarah was already tying on an apron. Cole told me what happened about you coming here for Martin Hale and finding him already dead. Lord, what a terrible thing. But you're in good hands now. Cole Reddington's one of the finest men in this territory, even if he is too stubborn for his own good sometimes. Evelyn found herself liking Sarah immediately. The woman filled the house with cheerful chatter as she worked, telling stories about the town and the people in it, never prying, but always welcoming. By the end of that first day, Evelyn felt like she'd known Sarah for years. Now you need anything, you just send word with Cole, Sarah said as she was leaving. And don't you dare try to do too much with that arm. Give it time to heal proper, you hear? I hear. Good girl. Sarah patted her shoulder gently. See you tomorrow. The pattern continued. Sarah came by most days to cook and clean and keep Evelyn company. Tom Whitfield, a weathered man of few words, helped Cole with the heavier ranch work. And every evening after the day's work was done, Cole would come back to the house and they'd share dinner. Those evenings became Evelyn's favorite time. At first they were tentative with each other, unsure of boundaries and propriety, but gradually they relaxed. Cole proved to be surprisingly easy company, quiet, but thoughtful with a dry sense of humor that caught her off guard. He asked questions about her life in Boston, and actually seemed to listen to the answers. In turn, she learned about his childhood on the ranch, about his parents, about the years of drought, and plenty that had shaped him. One evening, about a week after her arrival, Evelyn was sitting at the table trying unsuccessfully to cut vegetables one-handed. Cole had gone to check on a mare who was close to foaling, and she'd thought she'd surprise him by helping with dinner. It wasn't going well. The knife slipped for the third time, and she bit back a curse. Need a hand. Cole's voice came from the doorway. He must have come back without her hearing. I'm making a mess of it, she admitted. Here. He crossed to the table and picked up the knife. What are we making? I thought, stew, maybe? Like you made that first night. If I could figure out how to actually cut anything. Well, let's do it together then. You can tell me what to cut, and I'll do the cutting. He rolled up his sleeves. I'm not much of a cook, but I can follow instructions. It became a kind of dance. Evelyn would direct smaller pieces on the potatoes. The carrots should be about this size, and Cole would follow her guidance. He worked with the same careful precision she'd noticed in everything he did, and soon they had a pot of stew simmering on the stove. That wasn't so hard, she said, feeling absurdly pleased with herself. That's because you knew what you were doing. I just provided the hands. He washed his hands in the basin. Your mother teach you to cook. She did when I was younger, before she got sick. Evelyn stirred the pot. After that, I did most of the cooking for both of us. Nothing fancy, we couldn't afford much, but I learned to make do. Seems to me that's the most important kind of cooking, the kind that keeps people fed and cared for. Cole leaned against the counter. Sarah's a wonder in the kitchen, but half her recipes call for things I don't have, and wouldn't know what to do with if I did. Your way is more practical. Thank you for saying so. They settled into their usual spots at the table to wait for the stew to finish cooking. Cole had taken to keeping a book on the table. He was reading his way through a collection of poems that had belonged to his mother. Would you... Evelyn hesitated. Would you read something from the book? Cole looked surprised. You want to hear poetry? If you don't mind. I haven't heard anyone read aloud since my mother died. I didn't realize how much I missed it until just now. He opened the book, paging through it until he found something. Then in that quiet, steady voice of his, he began to read. It was Walt Whitman, I Sing the Body Electric, and Evelyn sat transfixed. Cole wasn't a dramatic reader, but he read with sincerity, and somehow that made the words more powerful. She found herself closing her eyes, just listening, letting the rhythm and cadence wash over her. When he finished, she opened her eyes to find him watching her. That was beautiful, she said softly. Whitman's always been a favorite of mine. My mother loved him too. Cole set the book down. There's something honest about his writing, direct, no pretense. Like you, Evelyn said before she could think better of it. Cole's eyes met hers, and something passed between them, a current of understanding, of recognition. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then the stew pot bubbled over, breaking the spell. They both jumped up, laughing, and the moment passed. But something had shifted. Some invisible line had been crossed. After that night, reading poetry became part of their evening ritual. After dinner, while Evelyn washed dishes one-handed and Cole dried, he would read. Sometimes Whitman, sometimes Emily Dickinson, sometimes poets she'd never heard of. And Evelyn would listen, feeling pieces of herself that had been frozen in Boston slowly beginning to thaw. The second week brought changes. Her arm hurt less, and she could do more around the house. She insisted on taking over some of the cooking, working with Cole to prepare meals. She learned to manage most tasks one-handed, developing workarounds and asking for help only when absolutely necessary. She also began exploring the ranch. With Cole's permission, she'd wander the property in the afternoons, never far, but enough to feel the space around her to breathe air that tasted like freedom. Bear became her constant companion on these walks, trotting beside her with his tail wagging, occasionally bounding off to investigate some smell before circling back. One afternoon, she found Cole working in the barn repairing a broken stall door. He looked up when she entered, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Afternoon. Something you need?" "No, Can I watch? I've never seen ranch work up close before." "Not much to see. It's just carpentry." But he didn't tell her to leave, so she settled onto a hay bale and watched him work. His movements were sure and economical, each strike of the hammer deliberate. He measured twice before cutting, tested each board before nailing it in place. It was meditative almost, and Evelyn found herself relaxing in a way she rarely did. "You're good at this," she observed. "Had a lot of practice. Things break constantly on a ranch fence's gates equipment. You either learn to fix them yourself or you go broke paying someone else to do it. Did your father teach you?" "Some, but mostly I learned by making mistakes and figuring out how not to make them twice." He fit another board into place. "That's how most of ranch life works, really. Trial and error until you get it right." Evelyn thought about that. "Is that true of everything, or just carpentry?" Cole glanced at her, understanding the real question. "Most things worth doing, I'd say. You can't learn to be good at something without being bad at it first. That's just how it works." "That's generous. Most people expect you to know what you're doing from the start. Most people haven't spent enough time alone to learn patience." He set down his hammer and looked at her directly. "You're doing fine, Evelyn. Better than fine. You've been here 2 weeks and you've already adapted more than most people would in 2 months. Don't be so hard on yourself." His words settled into her chest, warm and solid. "How did you know I was being hard on myself?" "Because you've got that look. The one people get when they're measuring themselves against some impossible standard and finding themselves lacking." He picked up his hammer again. "I see it in the mirror sometimes. Doesn't make it true, though." That night, Evelyn lay in bed thinking about what he'd said. For the first time since leaving Boston, she felt something stir inside her that wasn't fear or desperation or grief. It was hope. The third week brought rain, not a gentle drizzle, but a proper Montana downpour that drummed on the roof and turned the yard to mud. Cole spent most of the day in the barn doing work that could be done under cover, while Evelyn and Sarah worked in the kitchen. "You're looking better," Sarah observed as they rolled out dough for biscuits. "More color in your cheeks, more life in your eyes." "I feel better." Evelyn realized it was true. "I didn't think I would after everything, but this place, it's helping." "This place, or the man who lives here?" Sarah's eyes twinkled with gentle mischief. Evelyn felt heat rise in her face. "I don't know what you mean." "Oh, honey, I've been watching the two of you. The way you talk at dinner, the way he reads to you in the evenings, the way you light up when he comes in from working." Sarah patted her hand. "There's nothing wrong with it. Cole's a good man, and you'd be good for him. Lord knows he's been alone too long." "Sarah, I can't. I'm a guest here. He's helping me out of kindness, nothing more." "Is that what you think?" Sarah shook her head. "Cole Reddington doesn't invite people into his home out of kindness. He's generous with his labor, sure, and he'll help anyone who asks. But his home, that's sacred to him. He only brings people here who matter." Evelyn didn't know what to say to that. She wanted to believe it, but it seemed too good to be true. Men like Cole didn't fall for broken women with no prospects and nothing to offer. But that night when Cole came in soaked from the rain and she helped him out of his dripping coat, their hands touched and he didn't pull away immediately. Instead, his fingers lingered against hers for just a moment, barely a heartbeat, before he stepped back. "Thank you," he said quietly. And in his eyes she saw something that made her heart skip. The 4th week her arm was healing well enough that Dr. Wheeler pronounced himself satisfied. Another 4 weeks and you should have full mobility back, he said. You've been taking good care of it. Cole's been helping, Evelyn said. I'm sure he has. The doctor's tone was carefully neutral, but his eyes weren't. People are talking, you know, about you living out there. Let them talk. That's easy to say now, but talk has a way of becoming trouble, especially for women. He closed his medical bag. I'm not judging you, Miss Hart. I'm just warning you. Miles City is a small town, and small towns have long memories. The warning should have frightened her. Instead, it just made her angry. She'd crossed an entire continent, survived a coach accident, had her arm broken, and reset, and found herself stranded with nothing. If the worst thing people could say about her was that she'd accepted help from a decent man, then let them say it. That evening, she told Cole about the conversation. Does it bother you that, he asked. The talk. No, does it bother you, Mum? Not even a little. He was quiet for a moment, staring into his coffee. But Wheeler's right about one thing, it could cause you trouble. If you wanted to find work in town eventually, or, I don't know, build a life here, the gossip might follow you. Then I'll deal with it when the time comes. Cole looked up at her, and something in his expression made her breath catch. You're planning to stay then, in Montana? I don't have anywhere else to go, she said honestly, and I don't want anywhere else. For the first time in years, I feel like I'm actually living instead of just surviving. I'm not giving that up because some people want to gossip. Good. The word was quiet but fierce. Good. They sat in comfortable silence after that, but Evelyn's mind was racing. She was planning to stay in Montana. The realization had come out without her thinking about it, but now that she'd said it, she knew it was true. And more than that, she was planning to stay near Cole. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, it felt right. The 5th week brought the first hint of autumn. The nights grew cooler, and in the mornings, Evelyn could see her breath on the air. The leaves on the cottonwood trees began to turn gold, and the light took on a quality she'd never seen in Boston, clear and sharp, and somehow eternal. One evening after dinner, Cole surprised her. I need to ride out and check on the herd tomorrow, he said. It's a few hours' ride, and I'll be gone most of the day. Tom's coming with me. He hesitated. Sarah said she'd stay with you if you wanted, but I was thinking, if your arm's strong enough, maybe you'd like to come along. Evelyn's heart leaped. Really? If you're up for it. The riding's not hard, we take it slow, and I thought you might like to see more of the ranch. Get a sense of the whole property. He looked almost shy. But if you'd rather stay here... No, I'd love to come. His smile was quick and genuine, transforming his usually serious face. We'll leave at first light then. Dress warm, it gets cold up in the hills. That night, Evelyn could barely sleep. She felt like a child before Christmas, full of anticipation for the morning. When had she become this person? When had the prospect of a long horseback ride become exciting instead of daunting? But she knew the answer. She'd become this person gradually, day by day, in the gentle company of a man who asked nothing from her but gave her everything she needed. She'd become this person because Cole Reddington had shown her that she could, and tomorrow she'd ride out with him into the Montana hills and see the world through his eyes. The thought made her smile in the darkness of her room, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, Evelyn Hart went to sleep happy. The next morning dawned clear and cool, and by the time the sun crested the mountains, they were mounted and riding east toward open range. Tom had headed out earlier to check the north pasture, so it was just Cole and Evelyn riding side by side across land that seemed to stretch forever. Cole had given her a gentle mare named Daisy, and despite Evelyn's limited riding experience, the horse seemed to understand her uncertainty and moved with careful patience. Cole rode a big gray gelding, sitting easy in the saddle like he'd been born there. How's the arm holding up? He asked after they'd been riding for an hour. Good. A little sore, but nothing I can't handle. She adjusted her reins. Thank you for bringing me. I can't remember the last time I felt this free. Freedom's what Montana does best. He gestured to the landscape around them. All this, it's been in my family for 25 years, but it doesn't feel like I own it. More like I'm borrowing it for a while, taking care of it for whoever comes next. That's a beautiful way to think about it. They rode in comfortable silence, and Evelyn found herself noticing details she'd missed before: the way the grass moved in waves like water, the hawks circling overhead, the distant shapes of cattle grazing. The world felt impossibly large and impossibly alive. "There's something I've been meaning to tell you," Cole said eventually. They'd stopped to rest the horses near a creek, and he was staring out at the horizon. "About Martin Hale." Evelyn's stomach tightened. "What about him?" "He left a will, filed it with the county before he died." Cole turned to look at her. "He left everything to his mail-order bride. To you." The words didn't make sense. "But we never married. How could he—" "The will specified the woman who answers this advertisement and agrees to be my wife. That's you, Evelyn. Legally, his property passes to you." She stared at him, unable to process what he was saying. "His property? You mean his ranch, his land? About 200 acres just west of town with a house and barn and equipment. It's all yours." The world seemed to tilt. Cole, I can't accept that. It's not right. He didn't even know me." "Doesn't matter. It's legal and binding. I checked with the county clerk myself." Cole's voice was careful, measured. "You're a landowner now, Evelyn. You have independence, money when you sell it, choices." Choices. The word hung in the air between them. And suddenly Evelyn understood why Cole looked so serious, why his voice had gone flat. He was telling her she didn't need him anymore, that she could leave, build her own life, be free of obligation. Her heart clenched. "What if I don't want to sell it?" she heard herself say. "What if I want to stay here?" Cole's eyes snapped to hers, sharp and searching. "Here, at my ranch." "Yes." The word came out fierce. "I'm not ready to leave, Cole. I'm not ready to walk away from—" She stopped herself before she said too much. "From what?" She took a breath, gathered her courage. "From this. From the life I'm building here. From you." The confession hung between them, raw and honest. Cole didn't move, didn't speak, just stared at her with those winter sky eyes. Then quietly, "You mean that?" Every word. Something in his expression cracked open, and for just a moment Evelyn saw past his careful control to the loneliness beneath, the years of solitude, the quiet hope that maybe finally someone would choose to stay. "Then stay," he said roughly. "God, Evelyn, stay as long as you want." The sun was high overhead, painting everything gold, and in that moment, Evelyn knew with absolute certainty that she'd found what she'd been searching for all along. Not a husband arranged through letters, not security bought with desperation, but home. Real, honest, hard-won home. And she was never letting it go. They rode back to the ranch in silence, but it wasn't the comfortable quiet they'd shared before. This silence hummed with unspoken things, with the weight of her confession and his response, with all the possibilities that had suddenly opened up between them. Evelyn kept her eyes on the horizon, afraid that if she looked at Cole she'd see regret there, or worse, pity. But when they finally reached the barn, and he helped her dismount, his hands lingered at her waist for a moment longer than necessary. And when their eyes met, there was no pity, only something that looked dangerously like hope. "I meant what I said," he told her quietly. "Stay as long as you want. There's no rush to figure anything out." She nodded, not trusting her voice. Cole unsaddled the horses while she watched both of them, pretending that everything was normal, that the ground hadn't just shifted beneath their feet. That evening, they were careful with each other, overly polite, in a way they hadn't been in weeks. Cole read poetry as usual, but his voice seemed different, somehow softer, more deliberate, as if he was choosing each word specifically for her. And when Evelyn caught him watching her over the edge of his book, he didn't look away quickly, like he might have before. The next morning brought Sarah and a flurry of baking. Evelyn threw herself into helping, grateful for the distraction. But Sarah, perceptive as always, noticed immediately that something had changed. "You've got a look about you," she observed, kneading dough with practiced hands. "Like you've made a decision." "Cole told me about Martin Hale's will," Evelyn said. "About the land." "Ah." Sarah didn't seem surprised. And I told him I want to stay, here at the ranch." Sarah's hand stilled. "Stay here with Cole. Is that terrible?" "Terrible, honey. No." But Sarah's expression was troubled. It's just, you know what people will say, what they're already saying. I don't care what they say. Maybe you should. Sarah resumed, kneading, her movements more forceful now. I love Cole like a brother, and I can see clear as day that you two are falling for each other. But this town, Evelyn, they're already talking. If you stay here unmarried, living under his roof. What will they do? They'll make your life difficult, both your lives. They'll question your character, refuse you service in shops, exclude you from church gatherings. Sarah's voice was gentle but firm. I've seen it happen before. A woman's reputation is a fragile thing out here. Evelyn felt anger flash through her. So what am I supposed to do? Leave the first place I've felt safe in years because people want to gossip. No, I'm saying you need to think about what you're willing to sacrifice, because staying here like this, it will cost you something. The words haunted Evelyn for the rest of the day. She'd been so focused on her own feelings, on the growing connection between her and Cole, that she hadn't stopped to consider the practical implications. But Sarah was right. This wasn't Boston where she could disappear into anonymity. This was a small Montana town where everyone knew everyone else's business and where moral judgment could destroy a person's standing in the community. That night, Cole sensed her distraction. You're quiet, he observed over dinner. Something troubling you. Sarah said people are talking about me living here. Cole's jaw tightened. Let them talk. It's not that simple. She says it could cause real problems for both of us. What kind of problems? Evelyn repeated what Sarah had said, watching Cole's expression grow darker with each word. He stopped himself, visibly reining in his anger. That's small-minded nonsense. We're not doing anything wrong. We know that. But they don't care about the truth, do they? They care about appearances. Cole was quiet for a long moment, staring at his plate. When he finally spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. Do you want to leave? Is that what you're telling me? No. The word came out fierce. But I don't want to hurt you either. If my being here damages your reputation, your business. I don't give a damn about my reputation, and anyone who wants to judge me for helping someone in need can go straight to hell. He met her eyes. But I do care about yours. If staying here is going to make your life harder, I don't know what to do, she admitted. I don't want to leave, but I don't want to cause you trouble either. They sat in heavy silence, the weight of the situation pressing down on them both. Finally, Cole pushed back from the table. Let me think on it, he said. There has to be a solution that doesn't involve you leaving or us bowing to gossip. But what solution could there be? Evelyn lay awake that night, turning the problem over in her mind. She could move into town, rent a room at the boarding house, using money from selling Martin Hale's property. But that felt like running away, like letting fear dictate her choices. She could marry someone else quickly. There were plenty of men in Montana looking for wives. But the thought made her physically ill. Or she could stay and weather the storm of gossip, accepting whatever consequences came. None of the options felt right. The answer came 3 days later in the form of a letter. Evelyn was helping Sarah hang laundry when Tom rode up from town with the mail. There were 2 letters, one for Cole regarding ranch business and one addressed to Miss Evelyn Hart in careful, feminine handwriting. Who do you know in... Sarah squinted at the postmark. Philadelphia. I don't know anyone in Philadelphia. Evelyn took the letter with a sense of foreboding. She recognized that handwriting. It belonged to Mrs. Eleanor Prescott, one of her mother's oldest friends, a woman who'd always disapproved of Evelyn's choices. She opened the letter and read, Dear Evelyn, word has reached me of your unfortunate situation in Montana. I was shocked to learn that you are currently residing unmarried in the home of a bachelor rancher, a man you barely know. Such an arrangement is beyond improper. It is ruinous to your reputation and character. I write to you as a friend of your late mother who would be horrified by your current circumstances. You must extricate yourself from this situation immediately and return east where you belong. I have spoken with the Reverend here, and he has agreed to help you find respectable employment as a companion to an elderly widow. It will not be glamorous work, but it will preserve what remains of your good name. Please, Evelyn, do not throw away your future for some romantic notion of frontier independence. Come home before it is too late. I have enclosed funds for your train fare. Use them. with concern for your welfare. Eleanor Prescott. Evelyn read the letter twice, then a third time. Each reading made her angrier. The presumption, the judgment, the absolute certainty that Mrs. Prescott knew what was best for her life. Bad news? Sarah asked carefully. Someone from Boston heard about my situation. She wants me to come back east. Evelyn folded the letter with shaking hands. She's offered me work as a companion to an elderly widow. What are you going to do? I don't know. But even as she said it, Evelyn knew she was lying. She knew exactly what she was going to do. She was going to stay. That evening, she showed the letter to Cole. He read it in silence, his expression growing grimmer with each line. When he finished, he set it down carefully, as if afraid he might tear it to pieces. Is this what you want? He asked. To go back east. No. You sure? Because she's right about one thing, your reputation here is suffering. Going back might be the practical choice. I don't want practical. Evelyn surprised herself with the vehemence in her voice. I've been practical my whole life, Cole. I was practical when I stayed in Boston to care for my mother instead of building my own life. I was practical when I answered Martin Hale's advertisement. I'm tired of being practical. What do you want then? The question hung in the air between them. What did she want? Not safety or security or respectability. Those things suddenly seemed hollow compared to what she'd found here. I want to live, she said quietly. Really live. I want to wake up in the morning and feel excited about the day ahead instead of just enduring it. I want to work with my hands and watch the sunset over the mountains. And she broke off, suddenly embarrassed by her own passion. And, Cole prompted gently, and I want to keep having dinner with you every night. I want to listen to you read poetry. I want to learn about ranching and horses and all the things I never knew existed in Boston. She met his eyes. I want to stay here, Cole. Not because I have nowhere else to go, but because this is where I choose to be. Something blazed in Cole's expression, raw and unguarded and achingly vulnerable. Evelyn? A crash from outside cut him off. They both jumped to their feet as shouting erupted from the direction of the corral. Cole was out the door in seconds with Evelyn close behind. Tom was running toward them from the barn, his face pale in the evening light. Cole! It's the gray gelding. He spooked at something and went crazy. Kicked down part of the fence. Damn. Cole was already moving toward the corral. Where is he now? Ran off toward the east pasture. I tried to follow, but Cole didn't wait to hear the rest. He strode to the barn and emerged moments later with a rope already heading for the corral where his other horses waited. Evelyn watched him saddle the big bay mare with quick, efficient movements. Cole, wait, she called. It's getting dark. Maybe you should wait until morning. Can't. If he's hurt or tangled up in wire, every hour counts. He swung into the saddle. I'll be back soon as I can. Be careful. He looked at her, then really looked at her, and something passed between them, a recognition of how much they'd come to mean to each other, how the thought of something happening to him made her chest tight with fear. Always am, he said softly. Then he was gone, the bay mare carrying him into the gathering dusk. Evelyn stood watching until they disappeared from sight. Tom came to stand beside her. He'll be fine, the older man said. Cole knows this land better than anyone. I hope you're right. But an hour passed then too, and there was no sign of Cole. Full darkness fell, and with it came a cold wind that smelled of coming rain. Evelyn paced the main room, unable to settle. Sarah had stayed late, and now she made tea that no one drank. He's probably just having trouble catching the gelding, Sarah said, but her voice lacked conviction. You know how stubborn that horse can be. Another hour. The wind picked up, rattling the windows. Evelyn thought about Cole out there in the dark, trying to track a spooked horse over unfamiliar terrain. Anything could happen, a badger hole hidden by shadows, a stumble on loose rock, the gelding turning aggressive in its panic. I can't just sit here, she said suddenly. I'm going out to look for him. In the dark, Evelyn, I don't care if it's foolish. I can't. Her voice broke. I can't lose him, Sarah, not now. Sarah's expression softened. Oh, honey, you really do love him, don't you? The word hung in the air. Love. Evelyn hadn't let herself think it. hadn't let herself acknowledge what had been growing between them. But now faced with the possibility of Cole being hurt or worse, there was no point in pretending. "Yes," she whispered. "God help me, yes." "Then we'll both go look." Tom saddled 2 horses. But before Tom could move, they heard the sound of hoofbeats approaching. Evelyn was out the door before she could think, running toward the sound. In the darkness, she could make out a shape resolving into horse and rider. Cole. He was hunched forward in the saddle, and even from a distance, she could see something was wrong. The bay mare was moving slowly, carefully, and Cole was holding his left arm tight against his body. "Cole." She ran to meet him. "What happened?" "Found the gelding." His voice was tight with pain. "Got the rope on him, but he fought me. Pulled me off the mare. Landed wrong." Tom reached them and took the bay's reins. "Let's get you down." Cole dismounted stiffly, and in the lamplight spilling from the house, Evelyn could see blood on his face from a cut above his eye. His left arm hung at an odd angle. "Your arm." "Dislocated shoulder, I think. Had it happened before." He swayed slightly, and Evelyn moved to support him. "Sorry. Made you worry." "You're apologizing, Cole Reddington. You're an idiot." But her voice shook with relief and residual fear. "Come inside. Let me look at that shoulder." Between her and Sarah, they got him into the house and seated at the table. Sarah lit more lamps while Evelyn carefully helped Cole out of his shirt. His left shoulder was already swelling, the joint visibly out of place. "This needs to go back in," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Do you know how—" "Yeah, done it before when my father was alive. You need to—" He gritted his teeth. "You need to pull the arm straight out, then rotate it up and back. The joint should pop back into place." Evelyn stared at him. "Cole, I can't. What if I hurt you worse?" "You won't. I'll talk you through it." His eyes met hers. "I trust you, Evelyn." Those words steadied her. She positioned herself as he instructed, taking hold of his wrist and upper arm. His skin was warm under her hands, and she could feel the tension in his muscles. "Ready?" she asked. "Do it." She pulled steady and firm like he'd told her. Cole's breath hissed between his teeth, but he didn't cry out. She rotated the arm up and back, felt resistance, and then pop. The shoulder slid back into place with a sound that made her stomach turn. Cole slumped forward, breathing hard. "Good," he managed. "That's good. Christ, that hurt." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. You did perfect." He flexed his fingers experimentally. "It'll be sore for a few days, but it's back where it belongs, thanks to you." Sarah appeared with strips of clean cloth to fashion a sling. "You need to keep this immobilized for at least a week," she said sternly. "No arguing." "Yes, ma'am." While Sarah tended to the cut on his forehead, Evelyn realized she was shaking. The adrenaline that had carried her through the crisis was draining away, leaving her hollow and unsteady. She sank into a chair, pressing her good hand to her mouth. "Hey," Cole's voice was gentle. "I'm all right. You fixed me up good. You could have been killed. But I wasn't. Takes more than a spooked horse to do in a Reddington." He tried for a smile, but it came out more like a grimace. "Though I'll admit there was a moment when I was flying through the air that I had some regrets." "Like what?" The question came out before she could stop it. Cole's eyes found hers, and suddenly the room felt too small, too full of people. Sarah seemed to sense it too. "Well, I think that's my cue," she said, gathering her things. "Tom, let's head home. These two need to talk." "But," Evelyn started to protest. "Honey, some conversations can't wait." Sarah squeezed her shoulder as she passed. "Trust me on this." Then they were gone, and it was just Evelyn and Cole alone in the lamplight. The silence stretched between them, heavy with everything unsaid. "You asked about regrets," Cole said finally. His voice was rough, tired. "While I was falling, all I could think was that I'd never told you." He stopped, shook his head. "Never mind. You don't want to hear this." "Yes, I do." Evelyn moved to kneel beside his chair, looking up at him. "Tell me." "Evelyn, please." He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then slowly, carefully, as if the words were being pulled from somewhere deep inside him, "I was thinking that I'd never told you how I feel about you." How these past weeks have been the best of my life. How coming back to the house every evening stopped being routine and started being the thing I looked forward to most. How your voice reading recipe instructions makes me happier than any poetry I've ever read. How I... He stopped, his good hand clenching into a fist on the table. How you what? Evelyn whispered. How I'm falling in love with you. The words came out raw and honest. Hell, maybe I already have fallen. I don't know. I've never felt like this before, so I don't have anything to compare it to. All I know is that when I thought I might not make it back tonight, the thing that scared me most wasn't dying. It was that you'd never know, that I'd let you go on thinking you were just some charity case I took in, when the truth is what? She was crying now, tears streaming down her face. The truth is, you've become everything to me. His voice broke. But I know I'm not what you need. You're young and educated, and you deserve better than a rough rancher who's never been farther than Billings. You could take that money from Hale's property and build any kind of life you want. You could go back east where you belong. You should go... Stop. Evelyn stood up, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Just stop, Cole. She moved before she could lose her nerve, leaning down and pressing her lips to his. For a moment he was frozen with surprise. Then his good arm came up, his hand sliding into her hair, and he was kissing her back with a desperation that matched her own. It wasn't gentle or practiced. It was raw and real and honest, like everything between them had been from the start. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Cole stared at her with wonder in his eyes. I love you too. Evelyn said the words tumbling out in a rush. I think I started falling for you that first day when you held my shoulders while the doctor reset my arm and told me to look at you. When you brought me here and gave me a place to heal. When you read poetry in that quiet voice of yours and made me feel like I mattered again. She cupped his face with her hand. I don't want to go back east. I don't want Martin Hale's land or money if it means leaving here. Leaving you. I want to stay Cole. Not because I have to, but because I choose this. I choose you. Evelyn, his voice was hoarse. The gossip, your reputation, I don't care. Let them talk. I'd rather be happy with you and have the whole town against me than be respectable and miserable somewhere else. She kissed him again, softer this time. Unless you don't want this. Unless I'm reading this wrong. You're not reading it wrong. He pulled her down to sit on his knee, carefully managing his injured shoulder. God, you're not reading it wrong. But I need you to be sure. Once people know about us, there's no going back. Your life will be harder because of me. My life will be impossible without you. She rested her forehead against his. I'm sure, Cole. More sure than I've ever been about anything. They sat like that for a long moment, just breathing together, letting the reality of what they'd confessed settle around them. Finally, Cole spoke again. There's something else you need to know. About Hale's property. What about it? I went to see the county clerk, did some digging. He took a breath. The land's worth good money. If you sell it, you'll have enough to be independent for years. Enough to start your own business or travel or do whatever you want. So you don't need me. You don't need to stay here out of desperation or because you have nowhere else to go. You have choices now, Evelyn. Real choices. She understood what he was doing, giving her an out, making sure she wasn't choosing him out of gratitude or obligation. It made her love him even more. I know I have choices, she said. That's why this matters. I'm not choosing you because I have to. I'm choosing you because I want to. Because being with you feels like coming home after a lifetime of being lost. Jesus, Evelyn. His voice was thick with emotion. How did I get this lucky? We both got lucky. Or maybe it wasn't luck. Maybe it was supposed to happen this way. She smiled through her tears. A broken arm and a kind cowboy and a second chance neither of us expected. He kissed her again longer this time, his hand gentle against her cheek. When they finally pulled apart, the lamplight had burned low, and the night was deep around them. So what do we do now? Evelyn asked. Now? Cole's eyes were warm, full of something that looked like joy. Now I'm going to court you properly. Take you to town for dinner, maybe a dance if my shoulder heals up right. Let everyone see that I'm serious about you. And then, he paused. If you'll have me, if you still feel this way after I've courted you proper, and you've had time to be sure I'm going to ask you to marry me. You don't have to court me. I already know what my answer will be. Maybe not. But you deserve to be courted. You deserve flowers and compliments and a man who treats you like the miracle you are. His thumb traced her cheekbone. Let me do this right, Evelyn. Let me show you how it feels to be loved the way you should have been all along. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. How are you real? I could ask you the same thing. He kissed her forehead. Though right now I'm wondering if I'm dreaming. If I'm still lying in that pasture with a dislocated shoulder dreaming about the beautiful woman who's somehow chosen to love me back. You're not dreaming. This is real. She settled more firmly against him, careful of his injury. We're real. They stayed like that, wrapped around each other while the fire burned down to embers and the wind rattled the windows. Outside, Montana stretched away in all directions, vast and wild and unforgiving. But inside, in the small circle of lamplight, two people who'd been broken in different ways had found each other and become whole. Tomorrow, there would be practical matters to address. They'd need to figure out what to do about the gossip about Hale's property, about how to build a life together in a town that might not approve. But tonight, none of that mattered. Tonight they had this, the truth spoken aloud, the impossible possibility of love returned, and the knowledge that sometimes the worst disasters led to the best beginnings. I should let you rest, Evelyn said eventually, though she made no move to get up. Your shoulder needs time to heal. In a minute, Cole's arm tightened around her. Just stay a little longer. I'm not going anywhere. Promise. I promise. And she meant it. You're stuck with me now, Cole Reddington. Best thing that ever happened to me, he murmured against her hair. Getting stuck with you. The next morning brought reality crashing back. Evelyn woke early and dressed quickly, her mind already racing with everything that needed to happen. Cole's shoulder would keep him from heavy work for at least a week. The gossip would only get worse now that her feelings for him were no longer something she could hide. And there was still the matter of Martin Hale's property and what she intended to do with it. She found Cole already in the kitchen, struggling one-handed to make coffee. His left arm was still in the sling Sarah had fashioned, and his movements were stiff with pain. Let me, Evelyn said, taking over. You should be resting. Can't rest, too much to do. Tom can handle the ranch work for a few days. You heard Sarah, you need to keep that shoulder immobilized. Cole made a frustrated sound, but didn't argue. They worked together to prepare breakfast, falling into the easy rhythm they'd developed over the past weeks. But there was a new current running beneath the familiarity. Now awareness of their confessed feelings, anticipation of what came next. When Sarah arrived an hour later, she took one look at them and smiled knowingly. So, she said, settling at the table with her coffee, are we going to talk about what happened last night? Or are we all going to pretend nothing changed? Evelyn felt heat rise in her cheeks, but Cole answered calmly. We're not pretending anything. Evelyn and I have feelings for each other. I intend to court her properly, and if she'll have me marry her. About damn time, Sarah raised her cup in a toast. Tom owes me $5. I bet him you'd figure it out before winter. You bet on us? Evelyn couldn't decide whether to be amused or appalled. Honey, everyone with eyes could see where this was heading. You two have been dancing around each other for weeks. Sarah's expression sobered. But you know it's going to cause talk. More talk than there already is. Let it, Cole said flatly. I'm done caring what people think. Easy for you to say. You're not the one whose reputation will suffer most. Actually, I think I am. Cole met Sarah's eyes steadily. A man who takes advantage of a woman in need, who shelters her and then seduces her. That's how they'll paint it, and they won't be entirely wrong to judge me for it. You didn't seduce anyone, Evelyn protested. This was mutual. More than mutual, I kissed you first. Doesn't matter. In their eyes, I'm the one with power in this situation. You came here desperate and alone, and I used that. His jaw tightened. Which is why we're going to do this right. Public courtship, proper engagement, everything by the book. So nobody can say I took advantage. And you think that will stop the gossip? No. But it might blunt the worst of it. He turned to Evelyn. Which brings me to something we need to discuss. About where you'll live. Her heart sank. You want me to leave? No, Christ, no. He reached across the table to take her hand. But Sarah's right. As long as you're living here unmarried, the talk will get worse. So I think you should move into town. Get a room at the boarding house or rent a small place if you can afford it. Cole, hear me out. You move into town, establish yourself as an independent woman. We court openly. I'll come calling at proper hours, take you to church functions, dinner at the hotel. Let people see that this is real and respectable. He squeezed her hand. It won't stop all the gossip, but it'll show we're serious, that we're not sneaking around or hiding anything. Evelyn wanted to argue, wanted to say she didn't care about appearances. But the practical part of her, the part that had survived Boston and the journey west and everything since, recognized the wisdom in his plan. How long, she asked. A few months, long enough to establish a proper courtship. Then we can get married and to hell with what anyone thinks. You're really willing to wait months. I'm willing to wait as long as it takes to do right by you. His eyes were soft. You deserve a proper courtship, Evelyn. And when we do get married, I want everyone to know it was your choice, that you chose me freely with no desperation or obligation involved. Sarah was nodding. He's right. It's not fair, but it's the way things work. A few months of propriety now will save you years of whispers. Evelyn looked between them, recognizing the truth in their words, even as her heart rebelled against the idea of leaving the ranch, of leaving Cole. But if this was what it took to build a life together with their heads held high, then she'd do it. All right, Tit, she said finally. I'll move into town, but I'm coming back here to visit, often. I'm counting on it. Cole smiled. And I'll be coming to town to see you even more often. Fair warning, you're going to get sick of me. Never, she said softly. The decision made things move quickly. Evelyn used some of the money Mrs. Prescott had sent for train fare money she'd never dreamed of using for its intended purpose, to rent a small room above the general store. It wasn't much, just 4 walls and a bed and a small stove, but it was hers. Cole helped her move her belongings into town, his injured shoulder making him awkward but determined. Tom drove the wagon while Cole and Evelyn sat in the back among her possessions, his good arm wrapped around her shoulders. This feels wrong, she said as they approached Miles City, after everything leaving the ranch. You're not leaving, you're just staying in town for a while. He pressed a kiss to her temple. And I'll be here so often, they'll start charging me rent. He kept his word. Over the next week, Cole appeared in town every other day, always during proper visiting hours, always conducting himself with perfect propriety. He'd sit with Evelyn in her small room, door open, of course, and they'd talk for hours. About the ranch, about her plans for Hale's property, about the future they were building together. He brought her wildflowers that made her cry. He took her to dinner at the hotel, where half the town could watch them together. He introduced her to people as Miss Evelyn Hart, the woman I'm courting, with such obvious pride that she fell a little more in love with him each time. But it wasn't easy. Mrs. Marsh at the boarding house refused to rent her a room. The woman who ran the millinery shop turned cold when Evelyn entered. And at church that first Sunday, more than a few women turned their backs when she tried to greet them. Evelyn held her head high and pretended it didn't hurt, but Cole saw through her brave face. They'll come around, he said as they walked back to her room after the service. Once they see we're serious, once they realize this isn't some scandal. And if they don't, he stopped walking and turned to face her right there in the middle of Main Street where anyone could see. Then to hell with them. Evelyn, I know this is hard. I know you're bearing the brunt of the gossip, but you're not alone in this. You'll never be alone again. She believed him. And when he took her hand there on the street, making their connection visible to anyone who cared to look, she felt something shift. The whispers didn't matter so much when Cole was beside her. 2 weeks after she'd moved to town, Cole took her to a dance at the community hall. It was a risk walking into a room full of people who'd been gossiping about them, but Cole seemed determined to show the world that he had nothing to hide. They entered together, and conversation faltered as heads turned their way. Evelyn felt her courage wavering, but Cole's hand at the small of her back steadied her. Ignore them, he murmured. Just look at me. The music started a waltz, and Cole led her onto the floor. His shoulder was mostly healed, now strong enough to hold her as they moved together through the steps. Other couples joined them, and gradually the attention shifted away. See? Cole said, smiling down at her. Not so bad. You make everything not so bad. Right back at you. He spun her gently, Has anyone ever told you that you're beautiful when you dance? No one's ever seen me dance before. My mother was sick for so long, and before that, she trailed off. I guess there wasn't much dancing in my life. Then we'll have to make up for lost time. His eyes were warm. Though, fair warning, I plan to dance with you at our wedding until everyone else has gone home and it's just us and the music. Our wedding, she repeated softly. You talk about it like it's certain. Isn't it? Yes. She rested her head against his shoulder, not caring who saw. Yes, it is. They danced 3 more songs before Cole led her outside for air. The night was cool and clear, stars scattered across the sky like diamonds. They stood on the porch of the community hall close, but not touching, mindful of the eyes that might be watching. I've been thinking, Cole said, about Hale's property. What about it? You should sell it. Use the money to invest in something that matters to you. Maybe open a business in town or expand the ranch, whatever you want. But make it yours, Evelyn. Make it your choice. I've already made my choice, she said. I want to invest in us, in our future. If we're going to get married, then that money should go toward building the life we want together. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything. She turned to face him fully. Cole, I know we're supposed to be courting properly, taking our time, but the truth is I already know. I knew that night when you were hurt. Maybe I knew even before then. So yes, I'll marry you. Whenever you ask, whatever you ask, the answer is yes. Cole's face transformed, joy breaking across it like sunrise. Then I'm asking now. Evelyn Hart, will you marry me? Will you build a life with me on that ranch, raise a family with me, grow old with me? Will you take a chance on a rough cowboy who's never been good with words, but who loves you more than he thought it was possible to love anyone? Tears were streaming down her face, but she was smiling so wide it hurt. Yes, yes to all of it. Yes, forever. He kissed her then, right there on the porch where anyone could see. And if Mrs. Dorothy Marsh was watching from across the street with disapproval on her face, Evelyn didn't care. Because she'd found what she'd been searching for all along, not security or escape, but love. Real, honest, hard-won love. The kind that started with broken bones and ended with a promise of forever. The kind that was worth every whisper, every judgment, every sacrifice. The kind that made her finally completely whole. The news of their engagement spread through Miles City faster than wildfire through dry grass. By the next morning, everyone knew that Cole Reddington had proposed to the mail-order bride who'd come for Martin Hale and stayed for him instead. The reactions were predictably mixed. Some of the older women clucked their tongues and muttered about impropriety and unseemly haste. A few men made crude jokes about Cole's good fortune that earned them sharp looks from their wives. But there were also surprisingly voices of support. Mrs. Henderson from the Mercantile sought Evelyn out the day after the engagement to congratulate her. The blacksmith's wife invited her to tea. And Reverend Matthews, a kind-eyed man who'd been watching the situation unfold with concern, called on them both to discuss wedding arrangements. I'll be honest with you, he said, sitting in Evelyn's small room, with Cole standing protectively beside her chair. There's been talk, quite a bit of it, but I've also watched how you two conduct yourselves, and I see nothing but respect and genuine affection. If you're both certain this is what you want, I'd be honored to perform the ceremony. We're certain, Cole said firmly. More than certain. When were you thinking? Cole looked at Evelyn. They'd discussed this the night before, lying awake in their separate beds in separate places, already tired of being apart. Soon, Evelyn said. We've done the proper courtship. We've shown the town we're serious. I don't see any reason to wait months when we both know what we want. 6 weeks, Cole added. That gives us time to do it right, get the paperwork filed, have the banns read, let Evelyn make or buy a proper dress. But not so long that we're just drawing things out to satisfy people who'll disapprove regardless. Reverend Matthews studied them both, then nodded. 6 weeks it is. I'll announce the engagement in church this Sunday, and we'll read the banns for the required 3 weeks. That puts us at, he calculated quickly, the first Saturday in November. Weather should still hold if we're lucky. After he left, Cole pulled Evelyn into his arms, mindful of the open door, but unable to stop himself. 6 weeks, he murmured against her hair. I can manage 6 weeks. Can you? She smiled against his chest. Because I'm not sure I can. I miss the ranch. I miss falling asleep knowing you're just on the other side of the wall. I know. I hate being apart too. He pulled back to look at her. But it's worth it. When we get married, nobody will be able to say we rushed into it or that you didn't have a choice. They'll know this was real. She knew he was right, but that didn't make it easier. Still, she threw herself into wedding preparations with an energy that surprised her. She sold Martin Hill's property to a young family moving west from Ohio, getting a fair price that would give her and Cole a solid financial foundation. She used part of the money to commission a dress from the seamstress, nothing elaborate but beautiful in its simplicity, made of cream-colored silk that caught the light. Sarah became her constant companion during those weeks, helping with preparations and offering the kind of friendship Evelyn had been starving for without realizing it. They spent hours together planning the reception, discussing what food to serve, debating whether to hold it at the ranch or in town. The ranch, Sarah said firmly, that's where your life together is going to be. Let people come to you, see the place, understand what you're building. But what if they don't come? What if everyone stays away because they disapprove? Then you'll have a small, intimate wedding with the people who matter. Sarah squeezed her hand. But I think you'll be surprised. People are starting to come around. I've heard the way they talk about you two now. It's changing. Slowly, but it's changing. She was right. As the weeks passed and Cole continued his proper courtship, calling on Evelyn at appropriate hours, escorting her to church, introducing her to his business associates as his future wife, the tide of public opinion began to shift. It helped that they made such a striking couple that anyone could see the genuine affection between them. It helped that Cole was respected in the community, known for his honesty and hard work. And it helped that Evelyn herself began to find her footing in town, volunteering at the church, helping Sarah with community projects, showing that she was more than just a scandal. The turning point came 3 weeks before the wedding. Evelyn was at the Mercantile buying fabric for curtains when Mrs. Dorothy Marsh walked in. The boarding house proprietor had been one of their harshest critics, spreading rumors and casting judgment at every opportunity. Evelyn braced herself for another cold encounter, but Mrs. Marsh surprised her. "Miss Hart," she said, her voice not exactly warm but not hostile either. "I hear congratulations are in order." "Thank you," Evelyn replied carefully. Mrs. Marsh studied her for a long moment, and something in her stern face softened almost imperceptibly. "I'll admit I had my doubts about you, about the whole situation, but I've been watching and—" She paused, seeming to struggle with the words. "My own daughter made a hasty marriage once. Everyone disapproved, said she was making a mistake, but she and her husband proved us all wrong. They built a good life together, raised fine children. Sometimes love doesn't follow the rules we think it should." It was the closest thing to an apology Evelyn was likely to get, and she recognized it as such. "Thank you for saying that, Mrs. Marsh. It means more than you know." "Yes, well," the older woman straightened her usual severity, returning. "I suppose you'll be needing a venue for your reception. I imagine the ranch house isn't large enough for a proper gathering." "We were planning to hold it at the ranch regardless, even if it's small." "Nonsense. You should use the boarding house dining room. It's the largest space in town and—" Mrs. Marsh's expression turned almost sheepish. "Consider it my wedding gift. No charge." Evelyn felt tears prick her eyes. "Mrs. Marsh, I don't know what to say." "Say you'll accept, and perhaps—" The older woman's voice dropped. "Perhaps you'll allow me to help with the preparations. I do know something about hosting events." When Evelyn told Cole that evening, he laughed with surprised delight. "Dorothy Marsh offered to help the same woman who wouldn't rent you a room. The very same. Sarah says word's gotten around about her offer, and now other women are coming forward too. Mrs. Chen from the restaurant wants to provide the food. The Fletcher sisters are making decorations. It's like the whole town suddenly decided to get involved." "They're realizing what I knew from the start," Cole said, pulling her close, despite being on the main street where anyone could see. "That you're worth celebrating, that we're worth celebrating." The final weeks flew by in a blur of activity. Evelyn's dress was finished and proved even more beautiful than she'd imagined. Cole bought a new suit and got his hair cut, though it still fell across his forehead in that way she loved. The ranch house was cleaned top to bottom, and Tom built extra tables for the reception. Sarah coordinated the food preparations with military precision. And through it all, Cole and Evelyn stole moments together. Walks in the evening, quiet conversations on her boarding house porch, his hand finding hers whenever no one was looking. The anticipation built between them, not just physical, but emotional. They were about to start their lives together, about to make permanent what had begun with a broken arm and a stranger's kindness. The night before the wedding, tradition dictated they should spend apart. Cole came to say goodnight at Evelyn's room, and they stood in the doorway, neither wanting to let go. "Tomorrow," he said softly, his thumb tracing circles on her wrist. "Tomorrow, you'll be my wife. Tomorrow, you'll be my husband." She smiled up at him. "Are you nervous?" Terrified. But he was smiling too. "Not of marrying you, of that I've never been more sure, but of standing up in front of everyone saying vows, making it official. What if I mess up the words? What if I trip walking down the aisle?" "There is no aisle. It's the ranch yard. You know what I mean." He pulled her closer. "I just want it to be perfect for you. You deserve perfect." Cole Reddington. She cupped his face with both hands, her left arm fully healed, now strong and whole. "You gave me perfect the day you helped me off that street. Everything since then has just been proof that the universe occasionally gets things right. Tomorrow won't be perfect because nothing is, but it'll be ours, and that's better than perfect." He kissed her, then long and deep and full of promise. When they finally broke apart, his eyes were bright. "6 more hours," he whispered. "I'll be counting every minute." "So will I." She watched him walk away into the night, and when she finally closed the door and leaned against it, she was smiling so hard her face hurt. Tomorrow. Tomorrow she would marry Cole Reddington, and her life would truly begin. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and cold, the kind of November day where the sky was impossibly blue and the air tasted like coming snow. Evelyn woke before dawn, too excited to sleep, and found Sarah already in her room with coffee and breakfast. "You need to eat," Sarah said firmly. "I've seen too many brides faint at the altar because they were too nervous to eat breakfast." "I'm not nervous. Evelyn searched for the word. "I'm ready, more ready than I've ever been for anything." But her hands shook as Sarah helped her dress. The silk gown slipped over her head, settling against her skin like a whisper. Sarah buttoned the long row of buttons up the back, then stepped around to assess her work. "Oh, honey," she breathed. "You're beautiful." Evelyn turned to the mirror and barely recognized herself. The woman looking back was radiant, glowing with happiness that transformed her features. Her hair was swept up in a simple style that Sarah had spent an hour perfecting, with a few curls left to frame her face. She wore no jewelry except for a pair of pearl earrings that had belonged to her mother, or something old. "Something new is the dress," Sarah said, ticking off the traditional requirements. "Something borrowed." She produced a lace handkerchief. "This was my grandmother's, and something blue." She handed Evelyn a small blue ribbon, "to tie around your wrist under the sleeve." Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. "Sarah, you've done so much." "Hush now, no crying. You'll ruin your face." But Sarah was crying too as she helped tie the ribbon. "You've become like a sister to me these past months. I'm so happy for you. For both of you." A knock at the door announced Tom, who'd volunteered to drive Evelyn to the ranch and walk her down the makeshift aisle. He took one look at her and had to clear his throat roughly. "Well now," he managed, "Cole's a lucky man." "I'm the lucky one," Evelyn said, and meant it. The ride to the ranch felt both endless and too short. Evelyn's stomach fluttered with anticipation, but it was the good kind of nervousness, the kind that came from standing on the edge of something wonderful. When they finally turned onto the ranch road, she could see that what she'd expected to be a small, intimate gathering had turned into something much larger. There were at least 50 people milling around the ranch yard dressed in their Sunday best. Someone had strung up bunting and arranged chairs in rows facing a spot near the house where Reverend Matthews stood waiting. And there, standing off to the side with his hands clasped nervously in front of him, was Cole. He was looking at the ground, clearly anxious, and Evelyn's heart swelled with love for him. Then Tom called out, "She's here!" and Cole's head snapped up. The look on his face when he saw her was something Evelyn would remember for the rest of her life. Pure wonder mixed with joy, mixed with love, so intense it was almost painful to witness. He took an involuntary step toward her, then caught himself a smile breaking across his face that made him look 10 years younger. Tom helped her down from the wagon and offered his arm. Ready. So ready. They walked toward the assembled guests and people turned to watch. Evelyn saw Mrs. Marsh dabbing her eyes, Mrs. Henderson beaming, Dr. Wheeler nodding approval, and Sarah standing in the front row with tears streaming unashamedly down her face. But mostly, she saw Cole. Cole in his new suit, with his hair combed back and his eyes fixed on her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. Cole reaching out his hand as she approached, unable to wait for her to reach him. Cole's fingers closing around hers with a gentle strength that promised forever. "Dearly beloved," Reverend Matthews began, but Evelyn barely heard him. She was lost in Cole's eyes, in the way he was looking at her like she'd hung the moon. The ceremony passed in a blur of traditional words and responses. She heard herself saying, "I do." At the appropriate moment, heard Cole's voice steady despite his claimed nervousness, echoing the same commitment. Then the Reverend was pronouncing them man and wife, and Cole was kissing her while everyone cheered. "Mrs. Reddington," Cole whispered against her lips. "My wife. My husband," she whispered back, and the words felt like coming home. The reception was a revelation. Mrs. Marsh had outdone herself, transforming the ranch house into something magical with simple decorations and careful arrangement. The food was abundant. Mrs. Chen had prepared enough to feed twice as many people. There was music from a fiddle player who'd come from the next town over. And there was dancing. Cole led Evelyn in the first dance, holding her close as they moved to a waltz. He'd been worried about getting the steps wrong, but his body knew the rhythm, and they flowed together like they'd been doing this for years. "Happy?" he asked, his lips close to her ear. "Happier than I knew it was possible to be." "Good, because I plan to spend the rest of my life making sure you stay that way." They danced 3 songs before others cut in, Tom claiming a dance with the bride Sarah, insisting on a dance with the groom. Evelyn danced with Dr. Wheeler, with Reverend Matthews, with men she barely knew who wanted to offer their congratulations. And through it all, her eyes kept finding Cole's across the crowd, that invisible thread between them pulling taut with anticipation. Finally, as the sun began to set and the party showed no signs of ending, Cole appeared at her elbow. "What do you say we slip away?" he murmured. "Let them keep celebrating without us. They'll notice. Let them notice." His hand found the small of her back. "I've shared you with everyone else all day. Now I want my wife to myself." They made their way toward the house, trying to be subtle about it. But Sarah caught them at the door and winked. "Go on," she said. "We'll clean up. You two have more important things to do." Inside the house was quiet after the noise of the party. Cole closed the door behind them and leaned against it, just looking at Evelyn in the lamplight. "I can't believe you're really mine," he said softly. "I keep thinking I'm going to wake up and find out this was all a dream." "Not a dream." She crossed to him, reaching up to loosen his tie. "Very, very real." He caught her hands, bringing them to his lips. "Evelyn, I need to tell you something. Before I want you to know." She waited, watching emotions flicker across his face. "I've never done this before," he said finally. "Been with anyone like this. I know you probably assumed with me being a bachelor and all, but the truth is, I never found anyone I wanted to share that with until you. So if I'm clumsy, or if I don't know what I'm doing—" She stopped him with a kiss, pouring everything she felt into it. When she pulled back, his eyes were dark with desire and surprise. "I haven't either," she admitted. "Caring for my mother, there was never time for— I never met anyone who made me want to learn, until you." She traced his jaw with her fingertips. "So we'll figure it out together, like we've figured out everything else." Relief and love and want chased across his expression. "Together," he agreed. Then he scooped her up in his arms, making her laugh, and carried her toward what was now their bedroom. The morning after the wedding, Evelyn woke, wrapped in Cole's arms, with sunlight streaming through the window and the contented exhaustion of new love settling in her bones. She stretched languidly, and Cole's arm tightened around her. "Morning, Mrs. Reddington," he murmured against her hair. "Sleep well?" "Better than I ever have in my life." She turned in his embrace to face him. His hair was mussed, His face relaxed in a way she'd never seen before, and she thought she'd never seen anything more beautiful. You, best night of my life. Though I'm not sure how much sleeping actually happened. She felt heat rise in her cheeks but couldn't stop smiling. No regrets. Not a single one. He kissed her forehead, then her nose, then her lips. Though I am wondering how long we can stay in this bed before someone comes looking for us. As if in answer, they heard voices outside, the sounds of cleanup from yesterday's party. Tom calling to someone, Sarah's laugh carrying through the morning air. I suppose we should get up, Evelyn said reluctantly. Probably, though I'm tempted to tell them all to go away and leave us alone for the next week. Is that proper behavior for a respected rancher? I don't care about proper anymore. I only care about you. They eventually emerged from the bedroom to find Sarah and Tom had indeed been cleaning up from the reception. Most of the mess was already cleared away, and Sarah had coffee brewing and breakfast waiting. Well, well, she said with a knowing smile when she saw them. Look what the cat dragged in. How are the newlyweds this fine morning? Perfect. Cole set his arm around Evelyn's waist. Absolutely perfect. Over breakfast, they discussed the week ahead. Tom had handled the ranch work during the wedding preparations, but there was always more to be done. Winter was coming, and they'd need to make sure everything was ready, wood chopped and stacked fences repaired, cattle moved to better pasture. It was the rhythm of ranch life, and Evelyn was eager to learn her place in it. I want to help, she said. Really help, not just with cooking and cleaning. I want to learn about the ranch, about the work. Cole studied her. It's hard work. Long hours, rough conditions. I'm not afraid of hard work. I want to be your partner in this, Cole. In all of it. Something in his expression softened. All right then, we'll start slow, teach you what you need to know. By next spring, you'll be as much a rancher as I am. It became their new rhythm. Evelyn would wake before dawn with Cole make breakfast while he did the early morning chores, then spend the day learning the work of the ranch. Cole taught her to recognize each cow in the herd, to spot signs of illness or injury. He showed her how to mend fences, how to read the weather, how to handle the horses. Tom and Sarah became their constant companions, helping and teaching and slowly becoming more like family than employees. The work was harder than anything Evelyn had done in Boston, but it was also more satisfying. She felt her body growing stronger, her hands developing calluses, her muscles learning the movements of ranch life. And every evening, when the work was done, she and Cole would return to the house. They were making a home together. Those evenings were sacred. Cole would read poetry while Evelyn mended clothes or worked on her needlework. They'd talk about their days, make plans for the future, sit in comfortable silence that spoke of deep companionship. And then they'd go to bed learning each other's bodies and hearts with growing confidence and joy. The first snow came in late November, just a dusting that melted by afternoon. Evelyn stood on the porch watching it fall, marveling at how different her life was from what she'd imagined 6 months ago. Beautiful, isn't it? Cole appeared behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and pulling her back against his chest. Everything's beautiful now, she said. I keep waiting for something to go wrong, for reality to crash back in. It feels too good to be real. It's real, and nothing's going to go wrong. We fought too hard for this. He pressed a kiss to her temple. Though I'll admit I keep having the same fear, that I'll wake up and you'll be gone like you were never here at all. She turned in his arms to face him. I'm not going anywhere. You're stuck with me forever, Cole Reddington. Promise. I promise. She kissed him. Through every winter, every storm, every hard day and good day. I'm yours. And I'm yours. His voice was solemn, making new vows. For as long as I live and beyond, you're my home, Evelyn. My heart. My everything. As December arrived and the weather turned truly cold, Evelyn realized she'd been at the ranch for nearly 4 months. 4 months since that terrible day when she'd arrived broken and desperate. 4 months since Cole had knelt in the dust beside her and offered help without conditions. It felt like a lifetime ago. The woman who'd stepped off that stagecoach, terrified, alone, hopeless, seemed like a stranger now. That woman had been empty, hollowed out by loss and disappointment. But the woman Evelyn had become was full to overflowing with purpose and love and possibility. One evening in mid-December, as they sat by the fire after dinner, Cole suddenly set down his book and turned to her with unusual seriousness. I have something for you, he said. I was going to wait until Christmas, but I can't. He pulled a small wooden box from his pocket and handed it to her. It was clearly handmade, the wood polished to a soft sheen, with delicate carvings of wildflowers on the lid. Did you make this with? Evelyn asked, running her fingers over the carvings. Spent weeks on it. Open it. Inside, nestled on a bed of cotton, was a small piece of wood wrapped in ribbon. Evelyn lifted it carefully and realized what she was holding. Is this part of the splint I made for your arm that first day, when Tom helped me get you settled in the wagon? Cole's voice was rough with emotion. I kept it. Don't know why exactly, but when I was making the box, I realized that's the day my life began. The day you came into it and changed everything. I wanted you to have it, a reminder of where we started. Tears streamed down Evelyn's face. She held the piece of wood like it was precious beyond measure, because it was. It represented the moment when her broken life had begun to heal, when kindness had appeared in the form of a quiet rancher with winter sky eyes. Cole, she managed her voice thick, this is the most beautiful gift anyone's ever given me. You're the most beautiful gift I've ever received. He pulled her close. I love you, Evelyn. More than I have words to say. You took my lonely life and filled it with light. I love you too. She kissed him through her tears. You saved me. In every way a person can be saved. They held each other while the fire crackled and the Montana wind sang around the house. Outside, snow had begun to fall again. Real snow this time, the kind that would stick and transform the landscape. But inside they were warm and safe and completely content. Do you ever think about the choices that led us here? Evelyn asked later when they'd moved to bed and lay tangled together in the darkness. How unlikely it all was if the stage hadn't crashed, if Martin Hale hadn't died, if you hadn't been in town that exact day. I think about it all the time, Cole admitted. And I think maybe that's how fate works. It takes terrible things and broken pieces and somehow makes them into something beautiful. We were both broken when we met you, literally me in ways I didn't even fully recognize, but we healed each other. You healed me, she corrected. You gave me everything. No, you gave me everything. You gave me a reason to look forward to tomorrow instead of just enduring it. You gave me someone to build a life with instead of just maintaining one. You gave me love when I'd given up on finding it. His hand found hers in the darkness. We healed each other, Evelyn. That's the truth of it. She thought about that as sleep began to claim her, about the strange alchemy of loss and healing, of endings and new beginnings, about how the worst day of her life had led directly to the best days, about how a broken arm had led to a whole heart. In the morning, she woke to find Cole already up and dressed, standing at the window looking out at a world transformed by snow. He turned when he heard her stirring, and the smile that lit his face was pure joy. Come look, he said. She wrapped a blanket around herself and joined him at the window. The ranch was covered in a blanket of white, pristine, and beautiful in the early light. Smoke rose from the bunkhouse chimney where Tom and Sarah were no doubt having their own morning. The horses in the corral moved through the snow with casual interest, and beyond it all, the mountains rose purple and white against a brilliant blue sky. This is my favorite time of year, Cole set his arm around her shoulders, when everything's quiet and still and the world feels new again. It does feel new, Evelyn agreed. Everything feels new, like we're starting fresh. We are starting fresh, both of us. He pulled her closer. I know you miss Boston sometimes. Your mother, the life you had before. I miss my mother, Evelyn said honestly. I'll always miss her, but I don't miss that life. That woman I was, she was surviving, not living. Here with you, I'm finally living. Good. He kissed the top of her head. Because I plan to spend the rest of our lives making sure you never regret choosing this place, choosing me. I could never regret you. She turned to face him. You're the best choice I ever made. They stood together watching the sun climb higher, transforming the snow into a field of diamonds. And in that moment, Evelyn felt something settle deep in her chest, a sense of rightness, of being exactly where she was meant to be. She'd come to Montana broken and desperate, expecting nothing but a practical arrangement with a stranger. Instead, she'd found a home, a partner, a love that transformed her from the inside out, and a future that stretched ahead full of promise and possibility. The mail-order bride who'd stepped off the stagecoach with a broken arm was gone. In her place stood Evelyn Reddington, wife rancher beloved, a woman who'd been broken and healed, lost and found emptied and filled. A woman who'd discovered that sometimes the worst disasters led to the most beautiful beginnings. And as Cole pulled her back to bed, both of them laughing, neither caring about the work, waiting, or the cold outside, or anything but each other, Evelyn sent up a silent prayer of gratitude. For broken bones that healed stronger, for cowboys who promised gentleness and kept their word, for love that came unexpected and stayed forever. For this life hard-won and precious that she and Cole were building together one day at a time. For home. Winter gave way to spring with the slow inevitability of Montana seasons, and with it came new life to the ranch. The cattle began calving in March, and Evelyn found herself spending long nights in the barn alongside Cole, learning to assist with difficult births and care for newborns. Her hands, once soft from Boston drawing rooms, became capable and sure, knowing when to help and when to let nature take its course. "You're a natural at this," Cole said one dawn after they'd successfully delivered twin calves. They sat in the hay exhausted but satisfied, watching the mother clean her babies with rough affection. "I had a good teacher." Evelyn leaned against his shoulder. "Though I'll admit, when you first suggested I help with calving, I thought you were testing me. Testing you. To see if I'd really commit to this life, if I could handle the hard parts." Cole turned to look at her, surprise and something like hurt flickering across his face. "Evelyn, I never doubted your commitment. Not for a second. You proved that the day you chose to stay. I know that now. But back then I was still learning to trust that this was real, that you were real." She laced her fingers through his. "I kept waiting for you to change, to become someone different once we were married. That's what my mother always said would happen, that men showed you one face during courtship and another after the wedding. And have I changed? Only in becoming more of what you already were, kinder, more patient, more steady." She kissed his jaw. "You're exactly who you showed me from the beginning, Cole. That's the miracle of it." He pulled her closer, and they sat in comfortable silence, watching the calves struggle to their feet for the first time. Outside, the sun was rising over the mountains, painting everything gold. It was a moment of perfect peace, and Evelyn tried to memorize every detail: the smell of hay and animals, the warmth of Cole beside her, the satisfaction of work well done. "I have news," she said suddenly, the words escaping before she'd fully planned them. Cole straightened. "What kind of news?" "The kind that means we'll be doing a different sort of birthing come fall." She watched his face as understanding dawned. "I'm pregnant, Cole. We're going to have a baby." For a moment, he just stared at her, his expression cycling through shock and disbelief, and then pure incandescent joy. Then he was pulling her into his arms, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. "A baby," he whispered against her hair. "Our baby. Evelyn, are you sure?" "As sure as I can be. I've missed 2 courses now, and I've been feeling strange in the mornings. Sarah suspected before I did. She's the one who suggested I might be expecting." "Sarah knew before me." But he was smiling as he said it, too happy to care about the order of things. "I wanted to be certain before I told you. I didn't want to get your hopes up if I was wrong." "My hopes were already up. Have been since the day we married." He pulled back to look at her face, his hands cupping her cheeks with infinite gentleness. "You've given me everything, Evelyn. A home, a purpose, love I didn't think existed. And now a child. How did I get this blessed—" "We both got blessed." She placed her hand over his where it rested on her face. "Neither of us expected this when we met. But somehow we found each other anyway." They told Sarah and Tom that evening over dinner, and Sarah actually squealed with delight before pulling Evelyn into a crushing hug. "I knew it. I told Tom just last week that you had that look about you." She held Evelyn at arm's length, her eyes shining with happy tears. "Oh, honey, you're going to be such a wonderful mother." "I hope so. I'm terrified I won't know what to do. None of us know what we're doing at first. You figure it out as you go and you'll have help. The whole town will help, you'll see. Sarah turned to Cole. And you, how are you feeling, Papa? Cole's grin was so wide it looked like it might split his face. Like the luckiest man alive, though I'm already worrying about keeping them both safe. That's what fathers do, Tom said with rare wisdom. Worry and provide and try not to get in the way of the women who actually know what they're doing. The pregnancy progressed through spring and into summer. Evelyn continued working on the ranch as long as she was able, stubbornly insisting she wasn't fragile despite Cole's hovering concern. She learned to move differently as her body changed to accept help when she needed it to rest when exhaustion overtook her. And through it all, Cole was there, patient, protective, constantly amazed by the miracle of the life growing inside her. They spent long evenings discussing names and making plans. Cole built a cradle from wood he'd been saving, sanding it smooth and carving delicate patterns into the headboard. Sarah and several women from town threw her a quilting bee, creating a beautiful blanket for the baby, despite Evelyn's initial worry that she wasn't accepted enough for such traditional support. They've come around completely, Sarah told her as they worked on the quilt together. You and Cole proved the doubters wrong. You built a good marriage. You work hard. You contribute to the community. That's what matters here, not how you started, but what you build. It was true. Over the months since their wedding, Evelyn had gradually been folded into the fabric of Miles' city life. She helped at church functions, volunteered when needs arose, and slowly built friendships with women she'd once thought would never accept her. Mrs. Marsh had become an unlikely ally, and even some of her harshest early critics had softened when they saw the obvious love between her and Cole. The baby came on a crisp October morning, arriving 3 weeks earlier than expected, and with considerably more drama than Evelyn had hoped. Her water broke while she was in the garden, harvesting the last of the vegetables, and by the time Cole got her into the house, the contractions were coming hard and fast. Dr. Wheeler arrived within the hour, with Sarah close behind him. Cole was relegated to pacing in the main room, while the women worked and Evelyn could hear his boots wearing a path in the floorboards between contractions. The pain was worse than anything she'd experienced, worse even than her broken arm being reset. But Sarah held one hand and the doctor the other, and she bore down when they told her to breathe, when they said, breathe, and pushed with everything she had when the time came. And then after hours that felt like days, a baby's cry split the air thin and wavering, but unmistakably alive. A girl, Dr. Wheeler announced, placing the tiny, squirming bundle on Evelyn's chest. Healthy and strong and very determined to be heard. Evelyn looked down at her daughter, red-faced and perfect, and felt something fundamental shift inside her. This was her child, her and Cole's daughter, the physical proof of their love made flesh. Cole, she called out, her voice hoarse from crying out during labor. Come meet your daughter. The door burst open and Cole rushed in, his face pale with worry that transformed to wonder when he saw them. He approached slowly, reverently, as if afraid he might break something. She's so small, he whispered, reaching out to touch one tiny fist. The baby immediately grasped his finger with surprising strength, and Evelyn watched her husband fall completely in love. She's perfect, Evelyn said. Just like her father. Just like her mother, Cole corrected. His eyes were wet with tears he didn't bother hiding. What should we name her? They'd discussed names for months, but never quite settled on one. Now looking at her daughter's face, Evelyn knew with absolute certainty. Grace, she said, for the grace we were both shown when we needed it most. Grace Reddington. Cole tried it out, smiling. It's perfect. Those first weeks with a newborn were harder than anything Evelyn had experienced on the ranch. Grace was colicky and woke every 2 hours screaming to be fed. Evelyn walked the floor with her countless nights exhausted beyond measure, sometimes crying right along with her daughter. But Cole was there through all of it, taking turns when he could, bringing her water while she nursed, handling the ranch work so she could focus on the baby. And slowly, gradually, they found their rhythm. Grace's crying spells lessened. She began sleeping for longer stretches. And Evelyn started to feel like herself again, stronger and more capable than before. Look at you, Cole said one evening, watching her rock Grace to sleep while simultaneously giving him instructions for the next day's work. Managing a baby and the ranch accounts like you were born to it. I was born to survive, Evelyn corrected. This is just another form of that. Though I'll admit having help makes all the difference. We're partners in this. In everything. He came to stand behind the rocking chair looking down at their sleeping daughter. She has your nose, you know, and your stubborn chin. She has your eyes. Look how blue they're getting. Poor thing getting stuck with my eyes. I love your eyes. Winter sky eyes that I could look at forever. She tilted her head back to look up at him. I love everything about you, Cole Reddington. Even when I'm so tired I can barely stand, even when the baby won't stop crying, and the work never ends, I love this life we built. He bent to kiss her forehead. Right back at you, Mrs. Reddington. Grace grew from infant to baby to toddler with startling speed. Before Evelyn quite knew how it happened, her daughter was walking and talking and getting into everything with the fearless curiosity of a child who'd never known anything but love. The ranch became her playground with Bear as her constant companion and protector. When Grace was 2, Evelyn discovered she was pregnant again. This time a boy arrived right on schedule, a big healthy baby they named James after Cole's father. And 3 years after that came another daughter, Emma, who entered the world quietly and spent her first weeks just peacefully observing everything with Cole's serious winter sky eyes. The house that had once seemed too big for just 2 people now rang with children's laughter and the chaos of family life. Cole expanded the ranch steadily over the years, buying adjacent land when it became available, building their herd, establishing a reputation for quality cattle that spread beyond Montana. The money from Martin Hale's property had been invested wisely, and they were comfortable in a way Evelyn had never been in Boston. But more than the financial security, more than the growing success of the ranch, what mattered was the life they'd built together. Every evening, after the children were in bed, they still had their time reading poetry, talking about the day, planning for the future. The passion between them hadn't dimmed with time and children. If anything, it had deepened, matured into something richer than the desperate need of their early days. "Do you ever miss Boston?" Cole asked one night when the children were asleep and they were alone on the porch watching the sunset paint the mountains purple and gold. "Sometimes I miss my mother. Wonder what she'd think of all this." Evelyn gestured to the ranch, the life they'd built. "But miss Boston itself, no. That city was where I survived. Montana is where I came alive. Your mother would be proud of you, of the woman you've become, the mother you are." "I hope so, though I think she'd be shocked that I married a cowboy and live on a ranch." Evelyn smiled at the thought. She had such specific ideas about what my life should be. A respectable marriage to a clerk or shopkeeper, a small house in the city, a quiet, proper existence. This, she spread her arms wide, would have horrified her at first, but I think eventually she would have seen how happy I am. "Are you happy?" It was a question Cole asked periodically, as if he needed reassurance that she hadn't regretted choosing this life. "Happier than I ever dreamed possible. You know that." "I do, but I like hearing it anyway." He pulled her close. "Because you made me happier than I knew a person could be. Every single day, Evelyn. Every single day with you is a gift." The years continued to pass, marked by the rhythms of ranch life and the milestones of their children. Grace grew into a serious, capable girl who loved the horses and showed early signs of inheriting her mother's determination. James was quieter, thoughtful, with a natural gentleness that reminded Evelyn of how Cole had been when they first met. And Emma was pure joy, laughing at everything and bringing light wherever she went. The town had long since accepted them completely. Evelyn served on committees, organized church functions, and became known as someone you could rely on when help was needed. She and Sarah remained best friends, their children growing up together. Even Mrs. Marsh had become something like a friend, occasionally stopping by the ranch to bring treats for the children and dispense advice in her stern but caring way. "You know what I appreciate most about you, Mrs." Marsh said one afternoon while they watched the children play in the yard. "You proved me wrong. I judged you harshly when you first arrived, made assumptions about your character based on circumstances beyond your control. But you took those judgments and turned them into fuel to build something remarkable." "I had Cole," Evelyn said simply. "He believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. That made all the difference. You had each other. That's what good marriages are, 2 people building each other up instead of tearing each other down. My own marriage was like that before Mr. Marsh passed. I'd forgotten how beautiful it could be until I watched you two." She patted Evelyn's hand. "You give people hope, you know. Hope that love can still be found in unexpected places, that second chances exist, that broken things can be made whole." The words stayed with Evelyn long after Mrs. Marsh left. She thought about them as she went about her daily work, as she tucked her children into bed, as she lay beside Cole in the darkness. They'd become the story the town told itself, proof that judgment could be wrong, that love could triumph, that choosing courage over fear could lead to something beautiful. One evening, when Grace was 10, James 8, and Emma 5, the children asked about how their parents had met. They were all gathered around the fireplace after dinner, Cole reading while Evelyn mended a tear in James's shirt. It was a scene that could have been from any ordinary evening, except that Grace's question hung in the air with unusual weight. "How did you and Papa meet Mama? Was it romantic?" Evelyn and Cole exchanged glances. They'd told the children bits and pieces over the years, but never the full story. Now, looking at their expectant faces, Evelyn decided it was time. "It was romantic," she said slowly, "but not in the way you might think. There were no flowers or courtship dances at first. Your father and I met on one of the worst days of my life, and he turned it into the beginning of the best days." She told them about leaving Boston, about the advertisement she'd answered, about the stagecoach accident that broke her arm. The children listened with wide eyes as she described arriving in Miles City to learn that Martin Hale had died, leaving her stranded with no money and no prospects. "But then your father appeared." She continued, looking at Cole with all the love she felt. "A stranger who had no reason to help me but did anyway. He took me to the doctor, paid for my care, offered me a home while I healed. He showed me kindness when I desperately needed it, and in doing so, he gave me back my life." "Did you fall in love right away?" Emma asked, her romantic little heart clearly hoping for love at first sight. "Not right away," Cole answered. "But looking back, I think I started falling the moment I saw your mother on her knees in that dusty street, hurt and alone, but still fighting to keep going. She could have given up, most people would have, but she didn't. She chose to keep fighting. That's when I knew she was someone special." "And I started falling," Evelyn added, "when your father held my shoulders while the doctor reset my broken arm and told me to look at him. His eyes were so kind, so steady, like an anchor in a storm. I'd never felt that safe with anyone before. But people talked about us." Cole continued, wanting his children to understand the whole truth. "They said your mother shouldn't stay at the ranch with me, that it wasn't proper. We had to be apart for a while, prove that our feelings were real. It wasn't easy. But it was worth it," Evelyn finished. "Every hard moment, every sacrifice, every judgment we endured, it was worth it to build this life with your father, to have you three, to be this family." Grace was quiet for a moment, processing. "So Mama's broken arm was actually a good thing because it brought you together." "The broken arm was terrible," Cole said firmly. "But sometimes terrible things lead to good things. That doesn't make the terrible parts good, it just means we can find meaning in pain. We can take broken pieces and make something beautiful." "Like you and Mama," James said with the simple wisdom of childhood. "You were both broken pieces that fit together." Evelyn felt tears prick her eyes. "Exactly like that." That night, after the children were asleep, Cole found Evelyn on the porch staring up at the stars. He wrapped a blanket around her shoulders and pulled her close. "That was a good conversation," he said. "The kids needed to hear it, to understand that love isn't always easy or simple, but it's worth fighting for. Do you think we did right by them, raising them here, building this life? I think we gave them the best life we could. Love, security, purpose, a connection to the land. What more could children need? I just want them to be happy, to find what we found. They will. We're teaching them how by example every single day. They're watching us love each other, respect each other, work together. That's better than any lecture we could give them." The years continued their steady march. Grace fell in love with a young man from the neighboring ranch when she was 18, and Cole walked her down the aisle with tears streaming unashamedly down his face. James decided he wanted to study medicine and left for university back east, breaking Evelyn's heart even as she supported his dream. And Emma declared at 15 that she wanted to be a rancher like her parents, that this land was in her blood. and she never wanted to leave. Through it all, Cole and Evelyn remained the constant center. They grew older together, silver threading through their hairlines, deepening around their eyes, their bodies wearing the marks of years of hard work. But the love between them never diminished. If anything, it grew stronger with each passing year, each challenge weathered together, each joy shared. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Cole planned something special. He told Evelyn to dress nice, that they were having dinner at the house, just the two of them, with Sarah handling the cooking and the children spending the night with Tom and his wife. "What are you planning?" Evelyn asked suspiciously as she changed into her best dress. "You'll see, just trust me." She did trust him absolutely and without question. So when she emerged from their bedroom to find the main room, transformed candles everywhere, her best china on the table, wildflowers in a vase, she wasn't surprised so much as overwhelmed with love. "Cole, this is beautiful." "You deserve beautiful. You've always deserved it, but I wasn't sure I knew how to give it to you. I'm just a rancher, not some refined gentleman who knows about fancy things. You've given me everything that matters. Fancy has nothing to do with it." They ate the dinner Sarah had prepared, all of Evelyn's favorite foods, and talked about the 20 years they'd shared, the memories they'd made, the challenges they'd overcome, the life they'd built from nothing but hope and determination. After dinner, Cole led her outside. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold and purple. The mountains stood eternal in the distance, and the ranch spread out around them, everything they'd worked for, everything they'd become. "I have something for you," Cole said, his voice suddenly nervous in a way it rarely was anymore. "I made it myself, and I hope you'll understand what it means." He pulled out a carved wooden box, not the one he'd given her years ago with the splint piece, but a new one. This one was larger, more elaborate, with intricate carvings covering every surface, scenes from their life together, the ranch house, the mountains, horses, cattle, and woven through everything wildflowers. "Cole," she breathed, running her fingers over the detailed work. "This is incredible. How long did this take you?" "About a year. I worked on it whenever I had spare moments." He opened the lid to reveal the original small box nestled inside, along with several other items. "I wanted to add to what I gave you before, to create something that tells our whole story." Inside, carefully arranged, were tokens of their life together. The piece of splint from that first day, a pressed wildflower from their wedding, a lock of hair from each of their children's first haircuts, a smooth stone from the creek where Cole had first told her about inheriting Martin Hale's land. Small, seemingly insignificant objects that together created a map of their journey. "This," Cole said, his voice thick with emotion, pointing to the original splint piece, "is still the most important, because this is the day my life began. The day you stepped off that stagecoach broken and desperate and gave me the chance to be more than I was. Everything else, this ranch, our children, the life we built, it all started here. With a broken arm and a kind word and two people who decided to choose each other." Evelyn was crying now, tears streaming down her face as she looked at this man who'd saved her in every way possible. "You make it sound like I gave you something. But Cole, you gave me everything, my life, my purpose, my happiness, it all came from you." "No." He cupped her face gently, his rough rancher's hands careful despite their strength. "We gave each other everything. That's what makes this work. We were both broken in different ways, both needing something we didn't know how to ask for. And then we found each other, and we healed together." "I love you," she whispered. "More now than I did 20 years ago, more now than yesterday. More every day we're together. I love you too, so much that sometimes it scares me how much I need you, how empty my life would be without you in it." He kissed her softly. "Thank you for saying yes, for choosing me when you could have chosen anyone, for building this life with me. I didn't choose just anyone. I chose you. The only man I've ever loved, the only man I'll ever love." They stood together, watching the sun sink lower at his arms around her waist, her head resting against his chest. Behind them, the house that had once sheltered just one lonely man now stood as a home full of love and memories and years of shared life. The ranch stretched out around them, everything they'd built together from that first desperate beginning. "Do you remember what you told me that first night?" Evelyn asked. "When I asked why you were helping me. I said my mother always told me that kindness was the rent we pay for living on this earth. And you said you were behind on your rent. She turned in his arms to face him. But Cole, you've paid more than enough. You've given me a lifetime of kindness, of patience, of love. You've given our children a father who shows them what a good man looks like. You've given this community an example of what commitment means. You've given more than anyone could ask. Then we're even, he said with a soft smile. Because you've given me just as much. You took a lonely rancher who'd convinced himself he was fine alone and showed him what it meant to have a partner. Someone to share the burdens and multiply the joys. You gave me a family, a purpose beyond just maintaining what my father built. You gave me a reason to wake up excited for each day instead of just enduring them. Under the Montana sunset with 20 years of memories behind them and hopefully 20 more ahead, they held each other close. Two people who'd started as strangers, brought together by disaster, had become something unbreakable, something eternal. The sun finally slipped below the horizon, leaving the sky streaked with gold and pink. Stars began to appear, one by one, the same stars that had watched over them that first night when Evelyn arrived broken and alone. But so much had changed since then. Everything had changed. "Come on," Cole said, taking her hand. "Let's go inside. I want to dance with my wife." "There's no music." "Don't need music. We make our own." Inside, he pulled her into his arms, and they swayed together in the lamplight, moving to a rhythm only they could hear. The rhythm of their heartbeats, their breathing, the life they'd built together. Outside, the Montana night settled over the ranch, peaceful, eternal home. Grace was the first to arrive the next morning, bringing her husband and two young children. James had sent a telegram saying he'd be there by afternoon, making the trip from back east, specifically for his parents' anniversary. And Emma came racing up on horseback, late as always, but grinning with joy. The house filled with family, with grandchildren squealing and running through the rooms where their parents had grown up. Sarah and Tom came by with a ham and Sarah's famous biscuits. Even Mrs. Marsh appeared, bringing a cake and staying for coffee. Evelyn stood in the midst of it all, watching her husband lift their youngest grandchild into his arms, watching her children laugh together, watching 20 years of love manifest in this loud, chaotic, perfect celebration. And she thought about that broken woman who'd stepped off a stagecoach with nothing but pain and desperation. That woman would never have believed this future was possible, would never have imagined that from such complete disaster could come such complete joy. But life had a way of surprising you, of taking your worst moments and transforming them into your greatest blessings. Cole caught her eye across the crowded room and smiled that same smile that had first caught her heart, that had promised gentleness and kept that promise every single day since. She smiled back, putting everything she felt into it. Love and gratitude and contentment and joy. Later, after everyone had left and it was just the two of them again, they sat on the porch one more time. The wooden box with all their memories rested on Evelyn's lap, and she ran her fingers over the carvings in the fading light. "What do you think?" Cole asked. "Shall we do another 20 years? At least," she said. "Though I warn you, I'm even more stubborn now than I was at 29. You're going to have your hands full." "I'm counting on it." He pulled her closer. "Wouldn't have it any other way." The night deepened around them, Montana vast and wild and beautiful in every direction. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called. The wind whispered through the grass, and inside the house behind them, lamps burned warm and welcoming, a beacon of home, of love, of everything they'd fought for and won. "Tell me again," Evelyn said softly, "about the day your life began." Cole's arm tightened around her. It was a hot day in late summer, and a stagecoach pulled into Miles City carrying a woman with a broken arm and broken dreams. She stepped off into the dust and disaster, and she looked so brave despite being terrified. And I saw her, and I thought, this is someone who deserves better than what life's given her. This is someone worth fighting for. This is someone who could maybe possibly learn to love a rough rancher if he promised her gentleness and meant it. And did he mean it? That promise of gentleness? Every second of every day, from that moment until forever. Evelyn leaned into him, breathing in the scent that had become home leather and sage and horse and Montana air and coal. "Good answer. You can keep me." "Thank God for that. Don't know what I'd do without you." "You'll never have to find out." They sat in peaceful silence as the stars emerged one by one, painting the sky with light. 20 years ago, Evelyn had thought her life was over, had believed she had nothing left to offer, nothing left to hope for. But she'd been wrong. Life wasn't over. It was just beginning. And it had begun the day a mail-order bride with a broken arm stepped off a stagecoach into the arms of a cowboy who promised gentleness and kept that promise for a lifetime. The Montana wind sang through the prairie grass, carrying stories of love and loss and healing, of broken things made whole, of two people who'd found each other in the wreckage and built something beautiful from the ruins, of a life worth living, a love worth fighting for, a home worth building. Of everything that mattered, distilled down to its essence, two people choosing each other day after day, year after year, through every storm and every sunset, forever.